Noche del 12 de febrero, fiesta de la Candelaria, una ventana, un lucero y un ritmo mestizo y paria. Noche del 12 de febrero, fiesta de la Candelaria, una ventana, un lucero y un ritmo mestizo y paria. Mira que el niño no acabe, sal muchacha que no calle, que todo el pueblo ya sabe que te está creciendo el talle y los senos no te caben en tu vestido de calle. Y los senos no te caben en tu vestido de calle. En la Candelaria cuando llegará.
I was seeing yesterday there was a bunch of buzz on the internet. People were concerned with some of the things that were being said during some of the talks. Listen, guys, I'm not responsible for what people say up here on stage. People have been invited here because they were going to come talk about Monero-related things, privacy tech-related things, freedom fighting-related things, and we leave it at that. And then they say what they need to say on stage. And if you don't like what they're saying, you can walk out of the dome, you could turn off your stream, or better yet, you can respond to it and respond with your own form of speech and, you know, correct it if you think it needs correcting. So we are, you know, obviously we're free speech purists around here. We're developing and working on a free speech protocol, right? Essentially, at the end of the day, is what I believe it is. So that doesn't mean we support everything that everything says, and we're, you know, free speech absolutist doesn't mean you agree with everything everybody says, but it means we allow people to say what they need to say. And yeah, MoneroTopia is not responsible for the statements that others say. It's not our opinions, it's those of others. So just making that clear, because I saw some chatter out there. And I thought in this community that would kind of already be a clear thing. I thought we'd all agree to those basic concepts, but just wanted to get that out there. So first talk today is Francisco, aka ArticMine. He's going to be giving you a talk on why scaling matters, privacy and blockchain surveillance. Artic is our premier expert in all things scaling in Monero, and now he's going to be talking about it from the perspective of how that potentially affects privacy. Obviously, we all think about it in terms of how it affects scaling, but it is actually tied into privacy and surveillance as well. So are we ready to go, hey Jay? Yeah. So let's give it up for Artic. Come on up, man. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you for the very kind introduction. So what I'm going to be talking about today, a lot of it is actually going to be Bitcoin and Ethereum. That's a bit of a surprise. But it has real ramifications for Monero also. Now I got the lead. Now it's working. So what I'll be talking today, primarily, a lot of it is going to be about Bitcoin and Ethereum, although it also impacts Monero in a very significant way. So I'm going to start in the theme of free speech with a statement that Bitcoin actually has privacy. There is actually privacy in Bitcoin. And this is something that can be a bit on the controversial side, because there are certain groups and people in the community, and I'm talking the general crypto community here, who have a problem with this statement. One of the more interesting ones is, of course, blockchain surveillance companies, because they build an industry around breaking privacy in cryptocurrencies, and Bitcoin is the largest cryptocurrency. So if you start saying that Bitcoin actually has privacy in it, that is actually very contentious. And I will also point out that there are many in the Monero community who see privacy as the only unique selling proposition of Monero. And they also have some concerns about saying that Bitcoin has privacy. these are contentious issues because privacy is also a matter of degree. And the surprise is that the Bitcoin white paper, going all the way back to 2008, actually talks about privacy, has an entire section on privacy, and makes some very interesting statements on privacy, which are actually in many ways the basis of a lot of what we're doing in Monero today. And it's kind of not appropriate to go back and take a respectful and critical read of this, of Bitcoin white paper. And read it with both a critical mind, but also with a respectful mind. And there's a lot to be learned. Because of many members of the community, I will really suggest spend some time and read the Bitcoin white paper. That'll give you a good perspective of what's happening around in this industry. Section 10 of the Bitcoin white paper talks about two things. It talks about anonymous public keys. Now, if you think about this, is interesting. Something that's public is not going to be made anonymous. And it also talks about opt-in unlinkable transactions. Now, I've changed a bit of the wording here, but when you think about what it is, here are the quotes, it's actually quite revolutionary for its time and even today. So, anonymous public keys, and this is a straight quote from the Bitcoin white paper. Privacy, in that section. But privacy can still be maintained by breaking the flow of information in another place, by keeping public keys anonymous. Now think about this for a moment. Traditional private public key cryptography is based on the principle that you have a secret key, the private key that you don't reveal, and a public key that is associated with you that everybody knows. That's the idea. If you want to look at something like PGP, or GNU-PG as an example, depending on how you sign it with the private key and you decode it with the public key, and that's a signature, and you do it the other way around for encryption. You encode something with a person's public key, and then only they can read it with their private key. So what Bitcoin did, it says, well, now we're going to take the public key, and we're going to make it anonymous. That's quite revolutionary. And I think we need to stop here for a moment and think what that means. We're changing the fundamental premise of public-private key cryptography. Now, it also makes an interesting statement. So we have something that traditionally is called public, we're going to make it private. And this is the public key. And then we're going to go and say, we're going to create privacy by doing this. It is not a full replacement for making the amounts private, because we're going to say the public can see someone is sending an amount to somebody else, but without information linking the transaction to anybody. Now again, this is where the whole blockchain surveillance issue is precisely linking this anonymized public key to an individual or to an organization. So this is the key element of it. It is not a full replacement for making the amounts anonymous or private. And Monero proved this in 2017, close to 3 years after the start of Monero. Now, as an aside, I was involved with Monero in 2014, and I can tell you the amount of time and energy that was spent by the community figuring out how to run a transaction through ring signatures. In 2016, for example, was you have like 3.1456 Monero, you have to break it up into the 3, and the 0.1, and the 0.04, and so on. Run each one through a separate ring signature, and then link them all back together, which is actually the biggest strength of blockchain surveillance, and then you've mixed your transaction. And what has been proven in hindsight is that the single biggest privacy innovation in Monero today, to this day, not just coming down the stream, what is right now, occurred in 2017, which is why I emphasize the 7 in my slide, which was making the amounts private, anonymizing that. And what that did is it simplified, drastically simplified, and this is really important, the process of handling ring signatures. So this is a key innovation in Monero's privacy, probably one of the most important. It's not a replacement, however. So the second thing Bitcoin did is opt-in unlinkable transactions. And as an additional firewall, a new key pair should be used for each transaction to keep them from being linked to a common owner. Some linking is still unavoidable with full multi-input transactions, which necessarily reveal that their inputs were owned by the same owner. I'm quoting straight from Satoshi here. The risk is that the owner of the key is revealed. Linking could reveal other transactions that belong to the same owner. Now, in current blockchain surveillance parlance, this type of linking is known as clustering. So if you see, for example, a video from Chainalysis, they talk about clustering, or you read a court transcript and they're talking about clustering. That's actually what the parlance for linking that's referred to in the Satoshi paper is. Multi-input transactions are also referred to in blockchain surveillance as the co-spend heuristic. You might hear that term. Heuristic is really a fancy name for guess. Of course, not all multi-input transactions correspond to the same owner. Ever heard of a coin join? It's a perfect example where you have multiple transactions from different owners in the same transaction. So there are angles to this. But again, when we think of unlinkable transactions in Monero, what does Monero do? Well, Monero does one thing is it forces you to use a new key pair. And what we would think as a Bitcoin address in Monero becomes equivalent to these one-time addresses that you see as an output in the Monero blockchain. That is actually equivalent. It's a one-time use address. And then it also makes it convenient. And what it does that, I'm talking at a high level here, is it makes it easy. You just give out your Monero address, but then it does all this stuff behind the scenes. And what shows up on the blockchain is this one-time key pair. So what Monero has done here is make it easy to use and mandatory. So it's not an opt-out in Monero. It's forced in unlinkable transactions, and it's been made easy to use. This is really, really significant. So this is kind of the essence of Bitcoin's privacy. Now I'm going to emphasize this point because we hear this a lot from blockchain surveillance companies, particularly. A cluster is not an account. A recent leaked video from Chainalysis, they talk of clusters as if they were accounts. And anybody who's worked with the actual software, and I didn't work with Chainalysis, but I have seen I've been trained in blockchain surveillance, actually, certified in it, by CipherTrace. And so I saw how their software works, which is very similar. And you have the cluster is identified. So you have all these lists of clusters, and they're identified as this exchange and that organization and this organization. But there's an error associated with it. Clusters are not accounts. Whether it's for an individual, whether you're talking about an exchange or a market, and it could be any type of market, doesn't matter what its color is or what shade of white or black or gray in between or whatever you want to call it, that market is, a cluster is not an account. It is at best an approximation to account. It is full of errors and assumptions. And these heuristics are basically assumptions. And so, parts of the cluster could be different. So some parts are very strong, some parts are not. So that's the key point to understand. So I'm building this slowly here. Okay. So in Bitcoin, and this is important again, a key element of privacy is when it comes to privacy, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. This is really a simple example in Bitcoin is if you really can keep these transactions unlinkable, then that assists with the anonymity of the public key. A great example in Monero, and this is one that's really important, is what ring signatures happened in Monero in 2017 is that when transactions were made, the amounts were made anonymous. So you could not tell whether an output had like a few pico Moneros or a couple 100,000 Monero or something between. You could turn around, and when you're running a ring signature, you can take the assets of this whale with that of a pauper and run them both through a ring signature, and you didn't know which one was which. That's why it's so powerful when you hide the transaction amount and you're doing a ring signature. And this is why there's this huge growth in the strength of Monero's privacy by making the amounts anonymous. So it's important to understand the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. If you start out the other pieces of the puzzle, things like Dandelion++, for example, and you start adding all these pieces to the puzzle, you build the privacy of Monero. So if you break it into its components, each one of them may not provide a lot of privacy, but when you put them all together, then it's when you get the privacy we see today in Monero. So another example is more theoretical, but conjoins and centralized mixers, one of the biggest problems they have is how do you deal with change and amounts? And going back to some of the first mixers in 2011 and going all the way to things like the way Dash and their masternodes work, the real issue they have is how do you deal with change? Some of them have fixed amounts, and how do they deal with this stuff? Because the real problem that they face is someone's got 3.2 Bitcoin, the next guy's got 1.7 Bitcoin. How do you mix these transactions in a mixer and a conjoin? And again, it's a theoretical, but hidden amounts is the key issue here. If you hide the amounts and you run it through a conjoin, it's a hypothetical coin here where you just have confidential transactions without any of this other stuff, or you run it through a mixer, you get way more powerful results. So that's a very important point. Okay. Now, let's fast forward 2014 and look at Ethereum. Now, Ethereum is a very different model. Instead of using an output model like Bitcoin and making a reasonable attempt at creating unlinkability between the actual transaction model and the account, they actually have accounts. And the accounts can very trivially be associated with an individual. In fact, if you know of a famous Ethereum individual, you can put a search for their name and their Ethereum account. And this is the first page of Vitalik's Ethereum account. And it gives you all the transactions. And there is like about 50 pages of this. How much Ether he's got, how much it's worth at today's value in this account. So this fellow's got, according to this is fairly recent, 2.4 million US dollars worth of Ethereum. This is public knowledge. You don't have to do any clustering. Now you don't have an error. And you have a very high reliability as to who actually controls those keys. And then you can go to each one of those transactions, and you go somewhere else to a different account, and then you turn around and you run a similar search on them. And Ethereum isn't that particularly a very private cryptocurrency. And you look at this, and this is well known. This is a well and accepted known fact. So there's nothing here that is new, but when you look at it in this way, if I were to take in, this looks like actually getting a view key of someone's Monero wallet. Not even that, because it's showing in and out with a full view key. And then turning around and sticking it on the internet. And making it clickable. So you can click on each address and go to the person the money went to. You don't need a cluster. You don't need a massive computer account. So now we ask the question, which one is more private? Bitcoin or Ethereum? In Ethereum, it is trivial to get an account. You search in a search engine. In Bitcoin, one needs specialized software that's very expensive and wrapped behind non-disclosure agreements and powerful computers, and maybe the cluster will approximate an account, and I'm describing a blockchain surveillance company here. And Ethereum, all you do is just Google the guy's name and do your searching. Now, a term that's been thrown around by governments, and I'm not saying which is more private at this point, but what I will say is if you look at the term anonymity-enhanced cryptocurrency, which is being used to justify taking Monero out of centralized exchanges, for example, it becomes fairly obvious that Bitcoin is the AEC, anonymity-enhanced cryptocurrency, when compared to Ethereum. I can say that. Is it more private? We'll see. We shall see. So let's look at a real test case. What is FATF? If you've been around this conference, this is like the extreme opposite of a lot of the talks you've heard here. These guys are a quasi-international organization supported by most of the big economies, by the United States and some of the European Union and so on. And they push anti-money laundering legislation. Basically, they make recommendations to governments, and then those governments implement all sorts of rules, such as KYC, such as delisting certain currencies that you don't like, such as favoring blockchain surveillance, on and on and on and on. That's their job. This is not the most crypto-friendly organization. In fact, it's the exact opposite in its nature, certainly not to those who believe in individual privacy. So they came in a report, and what they did, and this is in 2001, and they went ahead and they went to 7 blockchain surveillance companies. They selected them. The FATF commissioned the companies to develop a matrix on the extent to which virtual assets are being used on a peer-to-peer basis or being transferred through a VASP, VASP being a centralized exchange in our terminology, and to the extent which is illicit use of virtual asset transfers, with no clear definition of what the word illicit is supposed to mean. In the scope of this project were 3 of the most prominent virtual currencies back in 2021, Bitcoin, Ether, and Tether being Tether on Ether, just to clarify that, ERC20. Only data relating to Bitcoin has been included in the report as it got the greatest coverage by the 7 companies. Wait a minute. Which one is the anonymity-enhanced cryptocurrency? That's the one they managed to speak on? Why didn't they really have a lot of information on Ethereum? When in fact, in theory, it should be a lot easier to get this kind of data out of Ethereum that should be out of Bitcoin. That's a puzzle for me. That was something that really puzzled me. Why? Why did they have trouble with Ethereum? What's the secret privacy tool here in Ethereum that is not present in Bitcoin? Interesting one. What's the secret privacy tool? Now, if you look at the data for Bitcoin, they were all over the place. They had ranges of between 3% and 80% for USD value of peer-to-peer. There's pages and pages in the report. Go to the source. Go to the FATF report. You can read it for yourself. There are ranges between 2.2% and 15.4% for USD value of so-called illicit activities, with illicit never been defined, which is really interesting. So they had a fair amount of trouble with Bitcoin, which you would expect, because there are privacy tools in Bitcoin. So you'd expect this kind of stuff. They won't tell you that in their marketing. They won't tell that to governments who they're trying to sell this stuff to. But what they will do is when you get a sort of dig in and you find what's really going on, yeah, they have serious error problems in here. But yet no data for Ethereum or even Ethereum-based Tether. Why is this so difficult to track and trace and surveil? And that's a question that really started to trouble me. Okay, so now we look at some interesting problems. Does scaling play a role here? Well, yes, it does. And we can take a look at blockchain surveillance as follows. We look at a blockchain with n outputs. That could be Monero, or it could be Bitcoin. And K of those outputs are involved in illicit activity. You have some definition of illicit activity. What are all the possible ways that I can choose K outputs from N outputs? There's a little mathematics here. And what we have is the combinational interpretation of the binomial theorem. Is if you've got a set of N objects, and you can choose which possible ways you can scale those N objects. The formula is well known as N factorial divided by K factorial times N minus K factorial. So what we have is basically the formula that in general explains at this most basic level how blockchain surveillance scales. And this is really significant because we can do a little mathematics. I'm not going to bore you, but I will provide you with a reference for those who are interested. We look at a simple case, x equals k over n, and essentially you can pick some number for x from our little graphs from the blockchain surveillance companies. You can choose between 0.5 and 15.5. Oh, sorry, 0.2 and 15.4. Let me go remember correctly. Pick some number in there. And then make you say, well, we've got a fixed percentage of illicit outputs. And then you simply show that this binomial distribution is order of 2 to the n. Now think about this. If you double the number of outputs in a blockchain you want to surveil, you have 2 to the number of outputs in that blockchain increase in the possible number of combinations. Now, we start to get a really interesting explanation of what may be going on here. The secret privacy tool in Ethereum is mass. Simple mass. It's a lot of ether. And to put it bluntly in a simple way, these blockchain surveillance companies are drowning in the ether. They're literally drowning in data, even with the size of Ethereum. Now, there are really important lessons from Monero here, because the first one is if we want to really harden the privacy of Monero, absolutely, we go with full chain membership proofs, as we heard already yesterday. But let's be really hard also. We aim for a transaction numbers in transactions in the Monero blockchain greater than that of Ethereum. The Ethereum community has proven they can defeat with any little privacy at all, just with mass. They're causing a lot of trouble to these companies and to the surveillance people. So just mass alone can actually defeat blockchain surveillance. Monero comes along and says, okay, we're going to put all this privacy. And then on top of that, we scale it to the point where we are bigger than Ethereum, or even bigger, and let them drown in data that's totally anonymous. And there is where we move on for privacy in Monero. So this is the key lesson here, and why it's so fascinating. Because now we have the opportunity to really make Monero even more private. What's the next major change in Monero's privacy is coming down the road? Full chain membership proofs. What does that do? What it does is it breaks linkage between transactions. So all you have is, instead of having 16 signers, we already have in Monero, as the potential signers of our transaction, we now have the entire blockchain as a potential signer, going all the way back to 2014. That's huge impact on privacy. Why is Monero considered more private than coins such as Zcash or Pirate Chain, where in fact they have an equivalent level of privacy in their private subsets? I know some people will say that you have a ceremony for Zcash, and a very famous Bitcoiner decided to go to my hometown in the middle of nowhere in British Columbia to do the ceremony as one of the 6 participants. in a place called Kersley, BC, and it took me not too much time to figure out exactly where he did the ceremony, because it's a little town on the highway, and there's a little motel there, and an RV park, and I stayed at that motel. And not only did I stay in that motel, but I actually parked my car with my truck with a Monero license plate, then took pictures of them, which is a lot of fun, and signed the guest register and said, I'll take mine, you know. So just for the fun of it. It was kind of hilarious. If he stayed in Toronto, it would have been a much better choice than Kersley, BC, where he was from. But he said he was going to be really good, and we're going to go to this really out of the place. But it's a perfect example. If you want to do something you want to hide from, do it in a big city, like here, Mexico City. That's a great place to do a ceremony. But let's not go to a little village somewhere in the middle of nowhere where you can be traced very easily. It was the same model. It's the same model here. But Zcash has a very small set of set transactions. And that's by privacy weakness. So Monero with less privacy beats them. Same thing, Pirate Chain. Pirate Chain is basically Zcash, but with no opt-out of privacy. Very small blockchain. It's actually easier to surveil than Monero. Why? Because it's so small. So mass is already defining Monero as a stronger privacy coin, the leader in privacy. If we can bring up to the level of totally, you break those rig signatures, you just have the entire blockchain as signers, and then we add the strength that already Ethereum has demonstrated of creating mass as a backup to our privacy. Just sheer mass of numbers of transactions, getting n the big, so that order of 2 to the n becomes prohibitively difficult to surveil. And the great thing about it is things such as our cost of transactions is generally order of n, or maybe in some cases order of log n. So we have the opportunity there. Then we really, really will harden Monero's privacy. So, conclusion. Ethereum is more private than Bitcoin? Yeah. I will make that conclusion. Because their mass takes over from their existing privacy. Monero is currently more private than Zcash or Pirate Chain. Yes. Again, mass is our advantage over them, because we're a bigger blockchain. Even though on a side-by-side level, it's less private. Scaling is critical for privacy. So now I'll leave it for questions and discussions.
Yeah, everybody, if you could just kind of do what this gentleman's doing here and get in line to give your questions.
If we use it, we win, right? If we use it, we win, is the summary, right?
Well, yes. No, if we use it, we win. If we also, but we use it in every level. Yeah. And it just is peer-to-peer. Yes. It's even centralized exchanges. Yes. We want to use it in every possible way.
That was my question, by the way. So my question was relating to Ethereum and some of the privacy technology built on top, things like Railgun and Secret. I think the implication of what you've just described in terms of the scaling trumping everything is that they're basically not worth bothering with. You might as well just use Ethereum. Well,
no, it helps. I mean, it builds upon the privacy already there. So if you have what Ethereum has done, and this is what they're doing, and in fact, is if you want to scale Ethereum, one of the things you have to do is you have to stick a lot of the computational work inside a smart contract and then hide that. So that's a scaling technique. So all this stuff helps, absolutely. But it builds on that basic mass of privacy.
Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation. I learned a lot. I wanted to get your thoughts on clusters being used as admissible evidence for court cases, because the Roman case and the Roger case seem to have relied a lot on those clusters. When I read
Which Roman case are we talking about?
The Bitcoin fog.
Okay, that one specific on that case because of the fact that I was involved with the defense. I can't comment on the specifics of it. But what I can say in general is that this is a real issue for the courts. This question of treating customers as accounts comes down ultimately to the validity of the analysis done by companies such as Chainalysis, and how that stands to the standards of court. That has not been tested. It has not been tested under appeal or second or third instance. So that's where we are right now. The matter is basically before the courts. And it comes down to the question of, will the clustering behind the scenes work that people like Chainalysis have done stand the test of legal scrutiny? If you ask me personally, I think on the long term there's a very low chance of that, but that's the test before the courts that has to be handled through appeal. So that's what I can say on that.
And do you think they'll set some kind of precedent with these cases, depending on the outcome, whether or not this kind of data could be used?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because essentially what's going to happen is once they get appealed and they work their way through the court system, under appeal in the United States, past first instance in the European community, etc., there are also challenges. That is definitely going to be precedent setting.
Thank you.
Hi, I was just, regarding, you were talking about volume, for the anonymity. Does that also apply if they target a specific account? Because then it's not volume anymore, or?
Well, I mean, you have to find that account first.
Okay.
So that's the first.
But they could find it just from the public key, right?
Yeah, you could. Again, if you know the account, you know the person, but then you could identify the illicit activity associated with that account. So you still have the needle in a haystack problem. I'm not saying that's the fight that you have. No, you could get a famous person and target them. So in that sense, but if you're trying to find particularly small criminals, you're going to have a real trouble because you have to find where that needle is.
I thought you could find once you have their account, you can find any of their transactions.
Yeah, but how do you find the account?
Oh, just by, I don't know.
That's the problem. That's the challenge. Once you find the account, yes, but how do you get to that account in the first place?
I guess it depends.
You got to sift through all that data, and this is where they start running into trouble. So if you ask the question, what is the percentage of illicit activity, that's where you start getting into trouble. Because you got to find the account. Once you've got the account, sure, you can trace it. If you've got actual accounts like in Ethereum, and then you get all this other second layer stuff that they're doing there. But how do you get to that account in the first place?
I guess by, let's say they're doing an investigation and
an investigation how?
Well, they see a particular transaction.
Now, if they have
they've got a suspect. They have a suspect, so they somehow find.
Yeah, if they have an offset. But one of the dangerous things with this stuff is that they have a suspect, and then they tell themselves that person is guilty. That's one of the biggest problems that you get in with blockchain surveillance. You start with a suspect, and the way the software works, it reinforces you to believe, as an investigator, that person is the guilty party. And you end up with very high risk of picking the wrong person. So you pick the wrong account. And you end up in implicating somebody who is innocent. And you can do it even simpler, even in Bitcoin. You can turn around and you sell Bitcoin privately, you bought with KYC. And that Bitcoin ends up in some illicit activity, and then the person who had the KYC, it gets flowed back to them. So that's where you really run into a problem. Sure, you may have a suspect. You may think a person is guilty. If you found them reliably some other way, okay, you may have something there. But if you just don't have that previous information, how do you get to that suspect in the first place? It's very debatable.
Okay, well, thanks. Right.
Thanks for your presentation, Francisco. Just a simple request. Could you put the conclusion slide back? I couldn't quite grasp the conclusion. Thank you.
This one? Or the one before?
That one. The very last.
That one there. Okay.
Hold on a second. Yeah, that one.
Okay.
Thanks.
Given that the kind of the core of your conclusion is that more combinatoric ambiguity is where this kind of base layer of privacy comes from just through sheer volume, what are your thoughts on achieving a similar effect by taking transactional activity off-chain, like what Bitcoin is doing? And what do you think are the trade-offs of that potentially adding ambiguity, but you still leak metadata interacting, given that second layers are mostly interactive?
Okay, here's the problem. One of the difficulties of Bitcoin. The weakness in Bitcoin is actually the fact that it has limited its layer one artificially through the need to protect. I mean, you get into a whole issue of scaling on Bitcoin, but the fundamental issue that Bitcoin has is you got this limited size of layer one. So that you don't have the mass data on layer one no matter what you do, because you can only put so many transactions in that blockchain, and it gets prohibitively expensive. So you're never going to achieve mass anywhere near you could do with Ethereum or Monero, for example, just on mass alone, because you don't have the layer one. And then you say, okay, we're going to put it on layer two. And where you get into a challenge, and this is what's happening with a lot of these mixes on Bitcoin and add-ons on Bitcoin and so on, is that these layer twos are semi-decentralized and never 100% decentralized. And so it's a lot easier to target a layer two than a layer one, if you're an investigator, if you're a government, and so on. So you want to create the mass in layer one. And yes, I mean, there's some innovative stuff like Taproot in Bitcoin. It's a great example. I mean, you could turn a Taproot transaction on the surface, and you say, okay, well, every Taproot transaction is potentially an atomic swap with Monero. When you think about that, the threat is more effective execution. You don't have to do atomic swap with Monero. But what happens is, if you're doing atomic swap between Bitcoin and Monero, that's easily attackable on the fee differential. So that then becomes less credible. So yes, you can create a lot of privacy on Bitcoin type coin on layer two, absolutely. But you better have some mass on layer one, and Bitcoin doesn't have that.
Hey, great talk. I was just curious to thinking about some of the centralized exchanges, similar to like StealthyX or some of the exchanges available on Trocador. I was just thinking from the perspective of every transaction interacting with those businesses essentially just looks like a simple transfer. So because it just looks like a simple transfer, does that kind of add to the anonymity or the privacy of the transactions, just because it kind of gets lost in the noise of a transfer versus like interacting with the smart contract or Tornado Cash or something else where you can kind of identify that there might be something shady going on versus like a simple like account-to-account transfer?
Well, the first thing you have, of course, is if you have massive clusters or the exchanges, you can identify that it went to an exchange.
Yeah.
So that's reasonably knowledgeable. Then what your protections there become is more traditional privacy laws. It's not the same if you reveal information to a VASP in a country like, say, in the European Union or in Canada, where there's strict privacy laws as to where that data can go, than if you just put it on a blockchain. So you have those advantages. So essentially, you limit the possible. You do have some mixing, but of course, at that point, you also KYC'd.
Assuming non-KYC, like StealthyX is like non-KYC.
Okay, so a non-KYC exchange which is centralized.
Yeah, but like some of the more like offshore type or.
Well, yeah, I know what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Okay, again, and this is actually interesting examples. I have seen situations where Silk Road, I think it was the original Silk Road, was seized by the government, then that data fell to a service, and then it was used to track people. So just because it's offshore, just because it's off the radar, doesn't mean at some point in the future some government's going to handle those servers, seize them, and then use it against you. So those can be particularly dangerous.
Yeah, especially if they have poor data retention practices, because then they're actually keeping logs of every transaction that they
Exactly. Process. So now you've got a data ban. Just because it's not legal in the, say, United States, for example, does not mean U.S. government may not be able at some point in time to access that data and then use it to trace and track people and surveil. So I would be very concerned about data in an exchange like that can be traced back to me, to be honest.
Okay, thank you.
A lot of people claim that the Lightning Network is more private. Have you got an opinion about that?
Lightning Network is somewhat more private, but again, can also be traced. And it comes down to justice transactions, opening, closing channels. I mean, it depends how you do it. Are you rooting through it or not? I mean, for example, a simple example of a Lightning channel where I'm doing business with a merchant on a regular basis, and it's just a channel between me and that merchant. Well, that's actually fairly private. Because what happens is at the end of that relationship, I can just close the channel, they close the channel, it's pretty hard to figure out what went on. But when you start routing and transferring between third parties, and then those third parties that have access to the shifting between the nodes, they get compromised, that's an entirely separate question. So Lightning is one of those really great technologies in Bitcoin that cannot do everything it's been expected to do. And that's I can see a lot of situations where stuff can be very successful. Let me give you an example. Let's say I deal with a merchant in Mexico City and I want to pay with them in Bitcoin, and I use Lightning. I open a channel with that merchant, I transact with them back and forth. When I leave, I shut the channel down. Now, in an ideal circumstance, that's great. The issue you get with Bitcoin, number one, is opening and closing the channel is going to cost you a fortune because of the fees. And that's a failure. It's a failure not of layer 2. Lightning is a failure of the layer 1. It's the same thing that if you, for example, started doing atomic swaps with Monero, the failure is an attack, which essentially means the person puts up the Monero at a fraction of a cent in fees, and the person puts up the Bitcoin, pays like $50 or something, if it's a big stress on the Bitcoin market, and the guy looks at the Bitcoin and says, no, I want my Monero back and I want the Bitcoin. And sure, he gets his Bitcoin back, but he's cost him $50 to put it back again. So you have a fee attack on the thing. Lightning has a similar issue. If you want to issue a justice transaction in Lightning, which is how you secure the thing, well, what happens if the price of the justice transaction is more than the amount of money you got in the channel? Well, now you have a problem. Your cost of getting justice is higher than what you're getting justice over. And that's one of the major attack vectors on Lightning. It's just a high fee itself on the layer 1. It's not a bad design of Lightning. It's how do you enforce it? How do you enforce that justice transaction? And those are real challenges. But the challenges come back from layer 1, not from the layer 2 technology. What Bitcoin has done is excel a lot of these layer 2s. But they're building it on a very shaky layer 1. Because of the limited capacity, the limited mass in layer 1. And that weakens the layer 2s. That's the essence. Even Ethereum, those gas fees start getting high. So, I go to an Ethereum group in Vancouver, and they had a pop machine. It used to be a Bitcoin pop machine. And they don't run Ethereum. You end up trading Monero for Polygon in order to access this machine for a few cents. You're not trading Bitcoin for Ethereum, you're trading Monero for Polygon so I can access that thing. That's very easy. I can just do it on an app, cheaply. And I tried doing the same thing to buy a can of soda by trading Bitcoin for Ethereum. Good luck. I have a very expensive can of soda. So that's kind of, in essence, where the issue lies with these things. You got to look at what it's built on. So you got a beautiful house with a shaky foundation. Hope I answered your question. Any further questions?
Which exchanges would you recommend? Know your client.
Okay, I'm not into non-KYC exchanges myself personally, so I haven't really researched that. I'm actually a believer in going straight from the fiat banking system into Monero and back from Monero into the fiat banking system and avoid these intermediary coins. Because I know where I stand. So I'm the wrong person to ask that question. There's a lot of people here who give you much better recommendations than I can. Any more questions?
Thank you very much. That was very nice and non-tribal. Much more open than expected from someone who works so much on Monero and preaches Monero all the time, and very honest in regards to the Lightning Network. I very much appreciate it. And I hope that you all got some useful information from it. And thank you for waking up so early to listen to the presentation. And now we have Jeffro, who has been yesterday during the All-Star panel. He spoke, he presented some points. Maybe some of you were not able to watch him. But now you get to ask him questions, you get to listen to what he has to say about his work in Monero, because he's both a community member and a developer. And if you have questions, once again, you line up to the microphone. Ideally, you had this hat in the swag bag that you can put on, so you're not going to be distinguishable on camera. That's sort of the point of having identical hats. And I'll leave the microphone to you, Jeffro.
Thank you. My name is Jeffro, or Jeffro256, and you can find me on GitHub or Matrix. That's the main places I hang out at. I can kind of start getting into what I'm going to talk about. Is a new addressing protocol for Monero called Caret. Stands for Crypto Note Address on Re-randomizable Ring CT Output Transactions. But I like Caret better. All right, yeah, so I already kind of mentioned that. So this is kind of what the stack would look like with Caret implemented, because I've kind of gotten some questions about, does Caret replace full chain membership proofs? It does not. This is kind of how it would look like. On the bottom, we've got RandomX, we've got just your block headers, difficulty adjustment. On this layer, this is just proof of work consensus. You don't need to know anything about Monero, basically. Just like a very, very, very basic format of the block headers and how to do difficulty adjustment. And then you guys have probably heard the talk about full chain membership proofs. That was what Luke Parker was talking about. That's going to be the base layer where all like the fun stuff happens, basically. And then the transaction, the block format. Caret is going to fit on top of that. Basically, Caret decides what values we put in the transaction. It doesn't determine proving systems. It doesn't determine like, basically, there's no consensus rules that say you have to do Caret. This is just how the wallets would interact with each other. It's just a standard. Basically, how we do now, it's sort of a little bit undocumented, and there's a lot of edge cases, but it exists. There's a addressing protocol that's documented in code. This Caret would kind of replace that layer. And then on top of that, you'd build your wallets, your payment gateways, exchanges, etc. All right, so why Caret? So compared to how we currently handle addresses, Caret is backwards compatible, so you can keep using your same addresses, but especially if you generate a new Caret wallet, the new addresses will be indistinguishable, but we get forward secrecy, which means that a quantum computer won't be able to trace your transactions as long as they don't know your address. And then unconditional forward secrecy for self-sends and change means that even if a quantum computer does know your address, then they won't be able to trace your transactions for your change and your self-sends. Outgoing view keys is something that people have wanted for a long time. Basically gives you the ability to fully sync your balance without having to have your spend key online, which will help multi-sig, it'll help hot and cold wallets, and it'll just help UX overall. Probably make scanning a little more user-friendly. And then we've got interpersonal only incoming view keys. So right now, the way the view key is set up, if you send change to yourself, you create a new output using basically just one of your addresses normally. So whenever you give your view key to someone, not only are they seeing which money is coming into your account, they also see what you send back to yourself. So Caret would enable you to give a private view key where you only see transfers from other people, not what you send back to yourself. And then mitigation against Janus attacks, I'll talk about that in a little bit in the later slides, because that one's a little tricky to get into. But then delegated sub-address generation. Basically, one of the main reasons that integrated addresses still exist is because you cannot offload the ability to create invoices with sub-addresses without giving your private view key. So Caret would enable that. Then payment ID confirmation is not that important, but it'd make payment IDs a lot more user-friendly because you can know exactly if you've got payment ID or not. There's some scenarios right now where it's ambiguous. And stateless burning bug handling, which has been done before, but Stateless burning book handling would just allow you to scan your wallet in a way that's a lot more robust and secure, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But that's a real quick shotgun look at what features you can get from Carrot. And now we've got to talk about some math. So I get this question a lot, like what actually is forward secrecy? This is a pretty good definition for Monero. Other people have different definitions, but this is a good one to work with in the context of Monero. So if someone has the ability to solve what's called the discrete log problem on Monero, they will be able to extract basically public keys, or private keys, sorry, from a public key. And that's really the core of it right there. If you get 2 points, if you can find how they multiply against each other to get the other point, that's really all the discrete log problem is. Oop. So a semi-theoretical threat, some people think it will be soon, some people will think it will be far away, but there is a pathway that exists for quantum computers to solve this problem. It's called the Shor's algorithm, and you have to have some physical conditions just right, but there is the possibility in the future that they will break this, so we should act as if it's going to happen and protect against that. So Monero cryptography background with the cryptography spelled wrong, sorry. So the output pub keys, the point on the curve that authorizes your spending or allows you to prove authorization of your spending is simply just a private key multiplied by a generator. If you know some elliptic curve math, this should be pretty basic. For those who don't, it's basically just a multiplication. Kind of like how integers are hard to factor by themselves. Normally you can't just take an integer that's really, really big and factor it. That's a hard problem. It's not very hard for quantum computers, but we'll get into that. And then key images take the form of that same private key multiplied by a hash to point. So the hash to point function takes some input and it spits out a pseudo-random point, or at least it's supposed to. And that key image necessarily has to show up in the transaction where you're spending as part of the proof. And if you can link output pub keys to the key images, that's what it means to trace the transaction graph in Monero. With Bitcoin, you can see exactly which things are referencing what. In Monero, you would have to link pub keys to key images. There's a lot of ways to do that. You can do decoy elimination until full chain membership proofs, but that's what it means to trace something in Monero. If it shows up, the linking tag, if you know the linking tag shows up in the transaction, that's where you know it's spent. So, and then, yeah, regarding outgoing view keys, because if you know the private view key here, or the private key to this output, necessarily, if you can spend it, you can make key images and vice versa. So this is why we do not have outgoing view keys right now. It's not a feature that is possible with RingCT or CryptoNote. Because if you can calculate a key image, you can spend, and there's no way to separate those that knowledge. And then also, we touched on this a little bit on the panel, but a quantum computer could find your private key, and if they know your private key, there's exactly one key image that could be for that public key, and then they can trace transactions in perpetuity retroactively, which is not ideal. So now, moving on to full chain membership proofs, if you see that extra plus YT component, that enables some new features. That's basically the only change that we make to the composition, and it ends up being backwards compatible. But that's that's how the new composition will change. Instead of having one private key, it's almost like you have two private keys per output, and they kind of end up blinding each other. So the key images are the exact same format, but now the output pub keys have that additional term. According to this formula, you can see you only need to know X. You don't have to know Y to solve to calculate the key image. Y can be kept private from scanners. Only the people who actually need to spend the transaction need to know Y. If you just need to know the balance, you only need to know X. So, and then how it enables forward secrecy, there's 252, to the power of 252 combinations, which is a lot, of X and Y values, such that KO could be XG plus YT. Basically, even though a quantum computer could find what a potential private key is, it could also find every single potential private key. And there's so many of them that it doesn't know which one is the correct one. They're all equally valid, which is what gives full chain membership proof plus forward secrecy. So just because I want to demonstrate kind of like a physical analogy to help hone it in, because it's kind of a hard subject. But so let's say I had 2 beakers and I put 10 blue marbles in the first one and 10 red marbles in the second one, and then I put them together and I shake it up and I give it to you and I say how many marbles were in the first beaker and how many marbles were in the second beaker. If you know that I don't use the second beaker, it's an extremely easy problem. Even though the marbles are all shooken up in the cup, you just have to pick them out, you count them, and you say there's 10 in the first and there's 10 blue in the first and 10 red in the first. And that's the one answer. There's no other answer. That's what the answer is. It just takes some time to pick out the marbles and count them, but there's exactly one correct answer. But let's say we use the second beaker instead, and we put some blue in the first, and then the rest in the second. We put some red in the first, and then some in the second. And then we shook it up, and then I gave you the resulting beaker of marbles. Even though it's the same thing, it's a beaker with 10 red and 10 blue at the end, because you know that I used the second beaker, there's 100 answers, all equally valid, and you can't pick which one out of all those is correct, unless you have like a time machine, or unless you were watching me before I shook it up. So that's kind of what's happening in full chain membership proof plus is you've got multiple calculations that are blinding each other, and so that even if you have infinite computing power, the nature of it, you've got multiple paths to the end result. All of them could be equally valid, and even if you have, it doesn't matter what kind of computing power you have, that information about how you got there is erased. All right, so now let's actually talk about how Caret works. That background was for full chain membership proof plus, which is really, really key to understanding how Caret unlocks the new features. All right, in terms of outgoing view keys, so going back to using the 2 generators, you only need to know X, you only need to know Y. The Caret, the main spend keys, so kind of like what the public spend key is now in Monero, the Caret spend pub keys would be a generate image key plus a proof spend key, and you only need to know the generate image key, and it uses both of those generators. So that's how the outgoing view key works. Because you can open it with the X component with just the generate image key, you only need to know that component to calculate your whole balance, and then you would ostensibly save the proof spend key for whenever you actually want to spend your Monero. And then forward secrecy, just building off of full chain membership proof plus, because you've got 2 secrets, both of which kind of blind each other out to a quantum computer. Unless they know your private view key, there's so many ways to open this output pub key. All of them are equally valid, which means that the key image could be anything. All key images, you can find a combination of key image that's valid for every output pub key and vice versa. There's basically a many-to-many or all-to-all relationship between output pub keys and key images because of the composition. So in other words, we're using both beakers now with Caret. All right, and then I touched on this a little bit about interpersonal only incoming view keys. So for change and self-send, before we just construct transactions back to ourselves normally, which means that we're open to the same attacks that would happen if our private view key was leaked. But with Caret, we use just a symmetric secret that doesn't get used in any arithmetic or any other calculations besides basically just hashing as a salt for a secret that hides the transaction. And because of that, because we're not using a private view key, we're not using elliptic curve math to hide that. Even if a quantum computer knows your address, they're not going to be able to see. They're not going to be able see what you received and where you spent it. Sorry, that was jumping a little bit ahead. That was kind of this slide. And then because we're using that secret instead of the private view key, you can give your private view key to someone, and they can only see incoming scans, not the ones that you make self-send and change. All right, so now I'm trying to explain the Janus attack to kind of explain the background of how we fight the Janus attack in Carrot. So let's say you have two wallets, or two addresses, and an attacker thinks that they might belong to the same person, but they're not sure. And they don't want the person to know that they're on to them and trying to link those two addresses. So what they're going to do is they're going to create an e-note, which is almost like a mix of those two addresses. And there's a special way you can construct it. You mix them together in a special way. Basically, but it looks like it's a transaction to just the one address. And then if you confirm that transaction, just tell them, hey, I received that Monero. Normally it would fail, but for two unrelated addresses, it would fail. But if you say that you got it and it worked, that means they had to have the same private view key, which means they belong to the same person. So the worst case scenario for that would be like if you had a public identity that was tied to something, and then you had an anonymous ID, and someone thought that those two things were linked, they would send a transaction to the public ID and use a Janus against the anonymous ID, and then if they confirm the reception of funds, then yeah, those two IDs would be linked. All right, so then how we actually fight this is there's two pathways. So we can either encode some randomness, which is almost like a seed for the transaction, and then the receiver decrypts it and then basically rebuilds the transaction exactly how an honest sender would do it, and basically just double checks that the sender did all of the steps for the transaction correctly. So that's the main path that would, for interpersonal transfers, that's what you do. And then the other one, which is mainly used for self-sends and change, that pathway, you would decrypt the same buffer, but then you would check if it's an HMAC, it's an authentication code, just a little string of bits that says, I know whoever created this buffer has my private key, which is me. So I made this transaction, and I can authenticate it as belonging to me, or someone who knows my private view key, in which case the Janus attack doesn't matter. All right, and then the burning bug attack. Whenever you have two e-notes with the same output pub key, because in Monero, the way we tell if you've spent money or not already, without tracking which ones it is the key image. The key image is going to be the same for two output pub keys that are the exact same. So if you get sent two output pub keys that are the same, you can't use both of them, you can only use one of them. So someone might send you, like you might get a normal transfer of 100 Monero, and then someone sneaky might see that you have that output pub key and then send you 0.1 Monero really, really quick. If that gets into the pool first and you see that and then you spend that, then you burn the 100 Monero, you can't use it later. So basically, and then how we would fix this is something that was done by guaranteed addresses before, but we just carry this over to Carrot. You take some kind of input context, which act as nonces. So there's only one there's only one Coinbase transaction per block. So if you use the Coinbase or the block index, that's going to be unique for every single transaction. Likewise, because key images on the whole chain are unique, if you use the first key image in a transaction, that's always going to be unique. And those act kind of as like nonces, and they get fed into the basically a hash function. And that makes sure that either they always come out unique or they don't scan. All right, and then deferred subaddresses. How this works, basically, if you can kind of, I'm sorry I made all these, if you're red-green colorblind, I'm very, very sorry about this, but at the bottom, there's the way we calculate subaddresses, you have to multiply by your private key at the end to get the view address pub key. You don't have to do that with the new Carrot construction because of the way we multiply it. It was probably done originally this way just because it makes multisig a lot easier. But this allows you, because you don't have to know the private key at the time of subaddress creation, you can give what's called a generate address secret to someone else, and then they can generate addresses on your behalf. Hopefully that will give us a pathway to deprecate integrated addresses, because that's something that's been people have wanted that to happen for a long time, but it hasn't really been feasible because there's still that use case of, well, what if I want to make, an infinite amount of transaction invoices and don't want to have to consult a scanner. And then payment ID confirmation, this one's pretty simple, but basically there's some scenarios whenever payment IDs, they might be addressed to you, they might not be addressed to you. It's kind of hard to tell. Like, for example, if you're in an exchange and you're sending 16 outputs to someone and you include a payment ID in a transaction, all 16 of those people, or I guess it's 15 and then one change, they're going to see the payment ID. And then the only way they really know if it's for them or not is if they know that they use payment IDs or not, and they can ignore it. Or if, because in the normal transaction logic, it checks if you have a key image also, it's a whole thing. This just makes it so that the ephemeral pub key, which is the private key of the other point in the transaction, is just a function of the payment ID, is either the nominal payment ID, which is what you would get as the scanner, or it's 0 in the case which just transmits the information that this payment ID is not for you, just ignore it. All right, and that's how Caret works. Sorry for all that math. And then so I'm just gonna talk about a couple other clarifications. For existing addresses, the features you do not get, so you can still make transactions with existing wallets and existing addresses. You just won't get outgoing view keys, and you won't be able to have someone else send Monero to you, or generate the addresses on your behalf and create invoices without being able to scan your account. And then also sort of the way the default Monero implementation does it is the seed is exactly equal to the private spend key. So you also wouldn't get internal forward secrecy, but that's implementation specific. That's the default. So that you also wouldn't get that by the default, but there's nothing like on the protocol that necessarily prevents that. And then some other random notes. How much time do I have, by the way? There's no one here, so I'm gonna just keep talking. All right, so Caret increases the output size from 73 bytes to 91 bytes. And then, so you might have heard a little bit about Jamtis Ring CT. That can be deployed on top, instead of Caret, completely indistinguishably, which is kind of really nice. We don't have to hard fork, we don't have to soft fork. Basically, whenever people want to just decide to start using it, they use the same, they have the same storage requirements, and they just look the same on chain. It would be it's impossible to tell the difference between them, or at least it should be, unless I mess something up. But that's kind of a nice thing. If you wanted the light wallet features of Jamtis in the future, you just move over to that, and nothing needs to happen. It's not gonna affect uniformity. It's not gonna make anyone mad, I don't think. The only thing would have to be is that other people would have to also implement it so they can send you money. Because the key image construction is backwards compatible with full chain membership proof plus. Luke talked about this a little bit, but the very first full chain membership proof transaction is going to have an anonymity set of like more than 120 million or something right now, whatever the current complete number of outputs on the chain, pre-ring CT or ring CT, they're all going to be captured in the anonymity set, and and that's only going to grow from there. And then Caret actually uses modification of the curve. It's a slightly different curve. It'll make the scanning somewhat slightly faster. And it will probably be, it depends on the implementation. It might be 30%. It might be a lot less than that. And I just want to shout out all these people that put in some work to Caret, or some derivation, or some spiritual predecessor to Caret. But and that's my presentation.
The question about Jamtis and Caret, they are basically contain the same features, or what is the nuance and what? Oh, my like Carrot and Jantus are basically the same?
Yeah, that's a good question. Now, yeah, sorry, my voice is going out. I talked with a lot of people yesterday. Yeah, so they're basically feature compatible with each other. At this point, they're almost exactly the same. Jamtis would let you do, the main difference with Jamtis is that you can do light wallet servers where you can filter out a percentage of the transaction on the chain. Versus, yeah, you can't do that with Carrot. You can give out what's called a filter assist key, and it'll knock out 99% of the stuff that isn't related to you for sure. So, and that has some, it's just kind of like a middle ground between, like the light wallet servers we have now, they leak basically your entire transaction history, and they technically don't allow key images. Like, you can't technically calculate key images, but in reality, especially with rings, you can basically just, in most cases, you can trace the entire history. So, and then compared to the Jamtis light wallets, they wouldn't be able to see amounts. They wouldn't be able to see if you received anything for sure. It would narrow it down, your involvement to 1% of the chain. But 10% of the chain is, say, like, I don't know, 10 million outputs. If you own 1,000, that's still decent set. And then there's some attacks you can do, but yeah, basically the main difference is the light wallet servers in Jamtis that Jamtis enables that Carrot can't do. Yeah. Yeah, the addresses are not compatible, and they're a lot longer too.
Okay, and Carrot basically is indistinguishable from current addresses.
Yes. Yeah, if I hand you an old address and a Carrot address, I think, or take this with a grain of salt, I think even if you're a quantum computer, you can't tell the difference. I'm pretty sure that's the case. But yeah, definitely traditionally, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. They look exactly the same, and they act exactly the same, except that the Carrot ones get new features. But yeah, thank you. Good question.
Hey, thanks for the talk.
Of course, thank you.
A lot of this was incredibly technical, and I consider myself to be a technical person, but a lot of this was still pretty over my head. So to summarize, like, the features like that Carrot is bringing about, would it be correct to summarize and say forward secrecy, and then it will also allow for a greater feature set for view keys, and then I believe you also mentioned that a little bit faster scanning.
Yeah. And
I probably missed a couple of things, but
yeah, outgoing view keys. Oh yeah, and then I can talk about multi-sig. If any of you ever try to set up a multi-sig Monero wallet, it's a pretty, like, it's kind of a terrible experience, unfortunately, because there's no outgoing view keys. What you have to do is, let's say you had like a 3 of 5 and you wanted to sync your balance, you have to talk to 2 other people and sync what are called partial key images into one key image. Basically, you have to, like, connect with other people just to, like, calculate your balance right now. With outgoing view keys, you wouldn't need to do that. You'd only need to talk to the other people whenever you need to spend money. And I meant to talk about that, but yeah, that's another thing that would really help the user experience with multisig. And the same principle for hot and cold wallets. Right now, you have to consult your cold wallet a lot to see if you've spent money, or just keep track of it out of your wallet, or you have to just ping back and forth with your cold wallet. The outgoing view keys would definitely help with that. Yeah, and then forward secrecy. The forward secrecy between people is only if the quantum computer wouldn't know any of your public addresses. So if they know one, they'll be able to see all of your addresses, and then just more robust stuff like Janus and Burning Bug, and that stuff is just closing up bugs that have existed for a long time.
Okay. Yeah, so the mitigation against those 2 attacks, in addition to the other stuff you spoke about, making multi-sig a little bit simpler and...
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I would say mainly, if you to summarize it, forward secrecy, in more cases, outgoing view keys, better view, and just more robust.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the great talk. I'm not technical at all, really, so a good bit of it was over my head, but I like the beaker presentation you made. That kind of helped things make sense. But in regards to the public address thing. So you're saying that if they know your public address and they have quantum computers, then they can track forward secrecy, or they can track things after that?
So with Carrot, if any one of your public addresses was revealed to someone who had a quantum computer that worked, I mean, they don't work yet, but yeah, if they had that, then what they can do is they extract your private view key. And in Carrot, that's the interpersonal only incoming view key. So if they have any of your public addresses and have the ability to solve the discrete log problem, what happens is that your private view key is leaked, which means all of your receives from other people are revealed. So not change and not self-spend, but money coming into your account from other people would be revealed.
Okay. And would there be a practical thing that somebody could do to mitigate that themselves?
Yes, you could. So this is, and this is probably not going to be the way the default one works, because the UI would be terrible. The UX would be terrible. But if you create a new private view key for every single time you create a new address, that would only, if you leaked one of your public addresses, it would compartmentalize it to that one address. But that would mean, like, so if you had 10, right now all of the sub addresses share the same private view key. So if you made it so they all had separate view keys, only leaking one, it would just compartmentalize it to that. But if you had 100 addresses, it'd be 100 times slower to scan. That's something you could do. And there's another thing which I posted a comment on somewhere, and I didn't put into the presentation, but if you assume the merchant is like a live merchant, like most online merchants are going to be, they're going to respond to you. Like right now the addresses are kind of like one, you can just fire money at them, and then you don't have to ever like talk to the merchant. But if you assume that you can like talk back and forth, if you've got like an internet connection, for example, if you assume that there's a protocol you can do basically where you just construct like e-notes back and forth between yourself, which I think happens on some, like Bitcoin, for example. Like people have already done this before, where instead of actually using an address, you just use like a symmetric secret, and you have to have a two-way channel. But that would mitigate that, so that even if any of your addresses came out, they wouldn't be able to extract any private view keys because you're not using private view keys.
Okay. Yeah, super interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Good question.
If no one else has another question, can I ask another one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we don't have quantum computers quite yet. So how did you simulate how a quantum computer would affect these kinds of things? Or is it all theoretical? Is there a way you could do a simulation for these kinds of things?
There's simulation, not so much, because we can't do it.
Right.
But the math, whenever it gets down to it, basically their ability that they have is pretty well defined. So it's mainly theoretical. You can mainly, if you're familiar with it, you look at it and you can see, this is just something multiplied by something else, and you can just kind of do like a manual analysis of it. I think that's how it works most of the time. And then there's other programs which they use like really fake small curves that are only like 36 big, that even like a normal computer could break. But because a normal computer could break that, you treat it, you pretend as if you don't know that the curve is really, really tiny and you could make it. But then you have like an adversary who could break it because it's really small. And then you can model some things that way. Some people do basically like automated analysis in that way. I'd say most of the time you just kind of look at it and do a manual analysis. But yeah, you can kind of simulate it.
Okay.
But you have to use really small curves, and then that you don't get to actually use what you're using. So it can be a simulation. It's kind of a bad simulation. But yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. You're using the best assumptions you can.
The thing is, if you could simulate what a quantum computer could do with a normal computer, you don't need a quantum computer.
Yeah, I figure. So
you don't need to know like how it's actually going through solving the discrete log problem. You just assume you can solve or not solve the discrete log problem.
Okay.
So yeah, good answer.
Got it. All right. So thank you again. A lot over my head. So appreciate it.
Maybe a second follow-up question to the Jamtis and Carrot thing. What I'm asking myself is if basically the Jamtis only gives us but gives us the possibility for the that you can give out a scanning key to a light wallet server without giving out your losing a lot of privacy. And I don't know what exactly other things are decoded in those longer addresses, but if we want to maybe change that to get more features in or get a more robust system for the future, wouldn't it make more sense to to change the address scheme as early as possible? Because to be honest, I mean, Monero gets used somewhat, but not extremely much. So the earlier we do that, the better it is. Because if we push that far out, then it's going to be a pain in the butt. I mean, if we look at Bitcoin probably is not going to change dramatically in the future anymore, because there are just so many people involved now, and to change to get a consensus on a smaller community is easier than on a larger community. So maybe what's your take on that? Well, technically the nice thing here is that we can do both at the same time. Someone can use Carrot, someone can use Jamtis, and the only thing that affects that is the sending person. Is the person that you want to receive money from able to send to you? Do they have Carrot code? Do they have Jamtis code? But on-chain, it looks exactly the same. So it's kind of like Bitcoin. Bitcoin has multiple address schemes right now, which is bad for uniformity because you can see them on-chain in some cases. But with Carrot and Jamtis, you could use them both together. They look exactly the same on-chain. So it's more like a UX problem for wallets, basically. That if you scan if you have a wallet that only sends to, or I don't know if wallets could do both if they check for, okay, is that a Jamtis or a Carrot address? And then they wouldn't be able to check. So you have a Carrot seed wallet. You have a Carrot wallet or a Jamtis wallet. You wouldn't mix the two.
Okay.
Because if you did mix the two, you'd also have to do 2 times as much scanning.
Okay.
So you'd probably have a Jamtis wallet or a Carrot wallet. I mean, nothing's stopping you from doing a mix of both, but you basically double your scanning. There's no flag that says this is a Carrot transaction, this is a Jamtis transaction. Okay. You just try it and see if you get money on both of them.
So but still the point stays that if we would want, or if we say, okay, Jamtis brings enough of improvements or possibilities for the future even, maybe, that it would be worth to do that sooner, instead of, if you use Carrot and Carrot is great, and then FCMP++ hits, and then suddenly we get a big spike in the Monero usage, then the possibility of not using Carrot addresses anymore gets smaller. So we kind of hinder ourselves.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it's a trade-off. Yeah, we have limited dev time, so we have to choose between the. I think basically the deciding thing for me, there's a lot of rightfully there's pressure to keep addresses backwards compatible because people you don't have to change your seed, you don't have to regenerate your addresses. So there's a lot of people, and donation addresses, for example, are statically posted on sites, and those would have to be invalidated if we just did Jamtis. Yeah, we just have limited dev time, and so having something that's backwards compatible now that also lets us move forward to something that could be possibly better, have more features in the future, I think that's the pathway we're going to take. But I mean, that's a good point. If adoption jumped up, it might be hard to get people on board with it.
As much as I like to criticize Bitcoin, I'm also trying to learn from their mistakes, basically. And I mean, maybe we don't need the features of Jamtis or whatever, but yeah, I mean, the problem just grows over time. So I mean, more and more people use it for donations and stuff. So the problem just grows the longer we wait, basically. But anyhow, thanks for the great work, and
it's a good point. Yeah, thank you, I appreciate it. All right, any other questions?
Thank you very much, Jeffro. That was technical and useful, and I learned something new from your presentation, like the Janus attacks. I was not even aware of these. And up next, we have the lead developer of a decentralized exchange protocol that you can actually run on your computer and trade with other people peer-to-peer the way it's meant to be. It's called Haveno, but I like to call it Havno because you can plausibly deny the fact that you have any coins. So you say you're using Havno because you have no coins. Anyway, we are expecting him to join us on stage. I don't even know. So, is it you? Okay. You want to connect your laptop for a demo? Okay, I'll ask the technician. He goes by the name Woodster, and he's also the maintainer of the Java repository of the Monero protocol. That's right. Okay, you looked at me like I said something wrong. And while we get set up, I just want to thank you for waking up early because I know it's difficult and everyone partied hard last night. And I think we have a much better setup today where the camera is not in the back, so the person who asks the question is no longer on camera, but it's still cool to wear the hats.
Okay, hello everybody. Thanks for being here. So yeah, I go by Woodser, and for the last few years, I've been working on this project called Haveno, which is an open source, peer-to-peer, decentralized exchange, and it's built all on Monero and Tor. So before I actually go into exactly what Haveno is, and we'll give a demo, first I just want to talk about the problems with these centralized exchanges. So many of you here are familiar with centralized exchanges and some of the problems, but to run through them, right? First off, centralized exchanges take custody of your funds. So that means that your funds are subject to loss. They can be lost either because the exchange gets hacked, it could be theft, it could even be an inside job, or there can just be legal mandates from the state to actually seize your assets. They require identity documentation, or KYC. And so with your identity, they then report all of your trading activity. They track your coins. So a lot of the big centralized exchanges are partnered with companies like Chainalysis. And so your coins, as you buy them, they get tagged and associated with you. And you keep that association. It's traceable all around these transparent blockchains. So they're tied to your identity. They charge high fees, so if the exchange is like one of those instant exchanges and they don't require KYC, then usually the fees can be 7%, something really high. And even for the more, like the normal KYC exchanges like Coinbase or Kraken, they're still charging 1.5 to 1.6%. In addition, they can manipulate the market by running fractional reserves, so they don't really have to have all the coins in their possession that they're claiming to sell to you on the books. And so this allows them to really manipulate the markets. They can also trade against you just by front-running your trade. So like when you execute a trade, they can put a trade in just before yours is executed, which moves your price just a little bit. And they can also be forced to delist assets. So that's what's happening with Monero. It's being delisted from exchanges around the world due to regulation. So right now in Europe, exchanges really can't even list Monero anymore with the recent regulation. So Haveno is an answer to these problems with centralized exchanges. So the word Haveno is Esperanto for a port or a harbor. It kind of is meant to mean like a safe haven. It's an open source, decentralized, peer-to-peer exchange platform. You can trade Monero for fiat currencies, cryptocurrencies, or even precious metals. Trades are non-custodial, so as you do your trades, nobody's in custody of your funds except for you and your trader, your peer. There is an arbitrator. There's an arbitration process. So if you have problems during your trade, an arbitrator can help you release your funds back to you. But at no point in time does the arbitrator ever have custody of your funds. They're only authorized to move the funds to one of the two peers. Yeah, trades are peer-to-peer, so there's no central authority that these trades are happening through. You're just doing a trade with some peer somewhere in the world. Communications are routed through Tor, so it's private. And yeah, there's no DAO, there's no token. It's not needed. The trades are secured using multi-signature wallets in the Monero blockchain, so we don't use any DAO or any token. There's nothing like that. Now, Haveno is a fork of Bisq, and essentially it's the same thing as Bisq, but we replace Bitcoin with Monero as the base currency. So, you know, Bisq was a major step forward because it was the first of its kind. It provided a decentralized peer-to-peer market trading system, but because it's built on Bitcoin, it inherits all of the problems associated with Bitcoin. Specifically, it's highly traceable, so you can monitor the trades that go through Bisq and know that those are Bisq trades. Also, with Bitcoin, you have unpredictably high transaction fees. They can spike up to $100. You also have unpredictable network congestion, so sometimes these transactions get backlogged for even days, so at that time, the Bisq platform really becomes unusable. Also with Bisq, you know, they have a DAO and a token, so there's a lot of technical weight associated with that, and you can feel it when you use their application. It takes a long time to load. Oftentimes there's problems. Also, you know, with Bisq, they're kind of gatekeepers, and they have kind of a maximalist agenda, so they refuse to list currencies like Bitcoin Cash, which they don't like. So what's the status of Haveno? It's been in development for over 4 years, so for quite a while now. And at this point in time, we consider that the code base is finally mature enough to run on Monero's main network. So you can do real trades with the software. So one can install Haveno onto their desktop. We support Linux, macOS, and Windows using a third-party installer. We do not provide actually any official installers to run on mainnet, because we do not operate or endorse any mainnet network. So we are only software providers providing the software. We do offer bounties for select issues, and these bounties are sourced from the donations that we receive. And in progress, somebody is working on a cross-platform mobile and desktop application through a completely independent CCS request. So yeah, that's in progress, and we'll see what they do, and I have a screenshot of their work. So what assets are listed? Well, we support all fiat currencies. We also support, in terms of crypto, Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, Litecoin, and Tether, USDT. And you can even trade gold, silver, and the gold backs. Cool, so now I'm going to give you guys a demo of the Haveno system. I'm just going to be running it here locally on my computer to do the trade so that I can control everything and make it go fast. So let's jump right into that. Okay, just make sure I'm good to go here. All right, should be good to go. 1 second, sorry. Okay. So here we're starting the application. And let's pretend that this is a brand new user just starting up the application for the first time. So when they enter, yeah, they can see the marketplaces that are, you know, being traded. I only have a couple of offers on the books within my local instance, so there's not a lot going on here. But you can come to buy XMR or sell XMR. So let's say you want to buy Monero. Okay, well here it's offering, if you want to buy Monero with fiat, and you can select amongst all of the fiat currencies. Do you want to buy Monero with crypto? So here are the options: Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Tether, and here's other, gold, silver, gold backs. So let's say I want to buy Monero with dollars. And all right, I see 2 offers here, so I want to take one of these offers. So I say, take offer. All right, well, I don't have my payment account set up yet, so that's the first thing I have to do is go set up my payment account so that I can do this trade. So I'll go to the account, and I'll add a new account. This is to be able to trade using Zelle, which is a popular payment system in the United States. So you put in your username. My name is John Doe, and you say jdoe@gmail.com. All right, so that's my account with my bank, my Zelle. So I save that, and now I get some pop-ups, and then I'm ready to do the trade. All right, now we can take the offer. So let's take the offer. Great, so it tells me, okay, you're gonna need to deposit a little bit of Monero in order to take this trade. That's the security mechanism. So in order to do trades, it does require a deposit in Monero that you get back when the trade is completed. So, all right, well, right now my wallet's not even funded. Here, one second, I'm gonna make the resolution better.
Just be careful playing with that.
All right, I won't worry about it then. Okay, so yeah, the problem is that right now I don't have any money in my wallet. I don't have any Monero to do the security deposit, so that's the first thing I'm gonna have to do. So here's where I would pull out my phone, maybe open up Cake Wallet, point the phone at the QR code, and send the funds, and it'll populate everything for you to send the right amount. In my case, I'll just send it from a different wallet. So I'm gonna come to my other application and send the funds from this wallet over here. I send the funds. It makes a little noise saying you received the money, so now here I have the funds here. And I need those funds to be available to me, so I'm gonna mine the 10 blocks. So in this case, yeah, you gotta wait for the funds to unlock. So this will be real quick. There we go. So the funds are now ready. I can stop mining. And now I take the offer. So what this is going to do is it's going to move all of the funds associated with the trade into a shared multi-signature wallet between the two peers and the arbitrator. And the arbitrator actually just received a fee, so that's what that was. Okay, so now I have my trade here, and it's an open trade, and once again, I have to wait for the funds to unlock within the multi-signature wallet. So right now, we don't have any confirmations, so I'll start mining. I run this, and you'll be able to see right here on the side, the confirmations come in. So that's just right here. All right. Okay, so now the funds are unlocked and I'm ready to go ahead and send the payment. So what the buyer of the Monero does, so I'm saying I'm buying Monero, what I have to do now is I need to go send payment to the other person for the Monero. So now I go to my Zelle account and I Zelle them the money to send them the dollars. So I say, okay, I sent it, and I say, payment is sent. I've sent you the dollars. And then the peer gets a little notification that says, hey, your peer just said that they sent you the money. Can you confirm that? And so the other peer would open up their Zelle bank account, say, yep, I got the money, so I'm ready to confirm that the money is received. So they just say, yeah, I got the money. And that's it. Now the trade is completed. The funds are released back to both wallets accordingly, and this trade is done. So that, yeah, here your trade was completed successfully. All done. Woo! All right. Thanks. So, all right, that's the demo. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about Haveno's API. So the application you just saw was the Java application, which is our main application. But we do offer a pretty fully featured API to be able to interact with Haveno. So this allows for people to create apps or even trading bots just using the API. And again, there is somebody working on an app for a new user interface that you can access from your mobile phone. Also, with this API, this is actually how we run the end-to-end tests for the entire system. So the thing that makes Haveno, like, we know it works well, it's all powered through these end-to-end tests going down the API, down through the whole system. Oh yeah, so here's this app. It's being worked on by a guy named Qubit, and he has an independent CCS funded to build out this application. You can run it on your mobile phone. He's got a lot of this code already working. And the way it's gonna work, at least initially, is that you would link your mobile app to your desktop version of Haveno. So it's not running entirely standalone on the mobile phone, but you have a link to your desktop. And here's the end-to-end tests. So like all these tests are really what tests everything throughout the entire system. And when you run these tests, what you'll get are some graphs like this, because these tests include like stress tests where we're basically having it process many trades all at the same time, and we want to ensure that when you just throw a ton of work at the whole system, it's able to get through it quickly. And so it's utilizing the CPU fully. It's fully at 100% to say, yeah, it's to work through that. So it's designed to scale. This also helps smoke out a lot of bugs, just doing this stress test. But it means that the computational power of people's computers won't be the bottleneck. It's going to be the network. Oh yeah, here's a little more data. So this is actually some data which shows that, you know, the boat floats, so to speak. And this is a live network. It's public data collected from the Haveno Redo network, which again, we are totally unassociated with, unaffiliated with, and this is not an endorsement in any way. But on their network, they're up to, actually they just crossed 1,600 trades this morning. So trading is happening, and they're about to break $900,000 traded in USD, and there's been quite an acceleration there. So overall, the system appears to be working, and people are able to get through it. So I also actually just wanted to talk about Haveno's library ecosystem a little bit, which is also something that I've worked on a lot in years prior, because Haveno is actually built on top of a stack of software, and it's not the same as Bisq, you know, which is all built on the Bitcoin libraries. You got to change those out and replace them with Monero libraries. So Haveno itself is built on a library called MoneroJava. And MoneroJava is built on top of the core Monero project code base. And in addition, there's two other counterpart libraries. So there's a C++ library and a TypeScript library. And when you put these three libraries together across Java and TypeScript and C++, we can really power an entire ecosystem of applications. So Haveno is just one, but also like Rhino was using our work. So, you know, because Rhino was a multi-sig wallet that you access directly in a browser, you know, and so in order to do that, you have to support full Monero capability natively in a browser, and that's what the TypeScript library was able to offer for them. Umbrel, TipXMR, any browser application really. So it's kind of our ecosystem. And in addition, with these software libraries, one of the things that we really worked on, or I worked on, was basically trying to kind of standardize Monero's data model. So it's a bit untamed in the Monero project code base. So this just aims to basically very clearly define, well, what are all of the data types within the Monero software, and create a very nice, clean structure to everything. You know, for example, to say, well, there's a block, and blocks have transactions, and transactions have incoming transfers. They can have an outgoing transfer. They have outputs. So just really formalizing that data structure. And that's what these libraries are entirely built on. So with the Java library, you can access wallet functionality using Monero Wallet RPC, so like using the RPC API. But you can also run a wallet with native bindings directly into the Monero project codebase, just using that C++ library. So you can actually run it fully native and not rely on the Monero Wallet RPC. And same thing with the JavaScript library. You can access it through the RPC API, or you can access it with native binding. So this is actually the first and only library that exists that allows you to run the full capabilities of a Monero wallet directly in your web browser, just by connecting to a Monero daemon. And with that, yeah, like Rhino was able to build across these libraries. They used, I believe, all 3 of them. There's now an Umbrel integration. Umbrel's kind of cool. It's like an operating system that runs a lot of things for you. And so now this is merged into their code base so that in the operating system you can actually manage a Monero node. Or this is just like a very simple web wallet, xmr.gift/wallet, and yeah, you just like, it runs in the browser, and you just save the hyperlink. Your hyperlink is your wallet, so you can just save your hyperlink and access your wallet at any time. Yeah, that's it. So, any questions or anything? Okay. Yeah.
Awesome presentation.
Thank you.
I've been looking forward to this for a long time, and it's just amazing to finally see it out. I do have a question. I know a lot of people are excited about Haveno because it's a non-KYC on-ramp that you can use fiat for.
Yeah.
And so let's say you do cash by mail. What if somebody says they didn't get the money?
So for that, we rely on like tracking methods within the mail. So like whenever you go send that package, you can get like all of the tracking added to that. And if there's any problem, you know, say they dispute it and they didn't receive it, then the person who sent the cash can actually provide that proof of the tracking to the arbitrator. And then the arbitrator can say, yeah, it's proven here that they did they should have gotten the cash, and so I'm going to release the funds accordingly.
So you'd recommend like certified mail and whatever you have to do to...
Exactly, yeah. I'm not actually an expert on all those things that the people have to do to do the mailing, but definitely you want to use like certified and make sure that they can verify, the arbitrator can verify it.
Okay, and the arbitrator would, you know, figure out how to resolve that dispute using that information.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
It seems from the website that at the moment it's only a PC application, right. Not a phone app yet, correct?
Right, that's right, yeah, it's only desktop now.
And if I want to use it on my desktop, just checking what you have there, you have to use a third party to install it or something like that. What's the path to install it on my PC?
Oh yeah, so because we don't operate any mainnet network and we don't provide those installers, you have to use a third party. So a third party would actually take our code base, fork it, configure, you have to change some things in the code to actually run a real network. So then they would start that up, and then they would generate the installers. And then those are available online through however they host it. So you would just download that to your desktop and install it through one of their networks.
For folks that are not that sophisticated like me for that, is there anything already in place? You're planning to have somebody that can process or help with that? I know it's third party, but at the moment, if I want to install it, that sounds complicated for me.
I mean, it's honestly, it's just as easy as like hopping online, doing a moment of research where you can find these third parties, or even just asking in some of the chat channels, and everybody has the answers there. So you just got to find one of those networks, and it's one more step. Unfortunately, it's another step, but that's where we're at now.
Just so the dev of Haveno doesn't have to associate with one of the networks, I'm the one network that's like he showed data from is Haveno Reto, like RETO. Okay. If you search for that, you find that. Awesome. So that's the biggest, most trusted network at the moment. Awesome. There might be others maybe in the future. I think there's one other, but that's the most used one.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a question on the arbitration process.
Yeah.
If you can go in a little more detail on how you have that set up in there.
Oh, just like generally how the arbitration process works?
Yeah, like, I don't know, explain the how somebody gets involved, or, you know, what's the, how they're imported in, I don't know, like security, making sure that, you don't have a bad arbitrator that's colluding with one party in the transaction? How do you have it set up in there?
Right, yeah, well, a few things here. So when you're using one of these networks, they're going to have a set of arbitrators lined up for you to use. And so when you take that trade, your trade is going to be assigned one of those arbitrators. Then when you're doing the trade, you've got that multi-signature wallet, which the funds are locked into, and the arbitrator has one of the 3 keys to that wallet. So if there's any problem during the trade, then either of the 2 peers can open up a dispute ticket, and that's going to then allow them to chat with the arbitrator that they were assigned to. The arbitrator will take in all of the information that they can and make a decision, and then they would release the funds from the multi-sig wallet. But yeah, so each network can have many arbitrators, and so essentially, the way the system is designed, the arbitrators are actually collecting fees for doing this process. So they're incentivized to be honest. If they mess things up, then people get angry and they shout it out real quick, and then they get called out. So that's how it works.
Okay, so it's like just an open-ended party on that side. There's no functionality that can be built in, and kind of like AI, some automation on the on that part, just to kind of screen out some of the obvious issues, and so you don't have to always have a live person in every single arbitration.
Yeah,
but it's just open, so there's only can be we still need a human to deal with every 100% of all arbitration then. Is that where it's currently at then?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, right now it's a human, but with the way that the AI is going at this point, it's not hard to imagine that you can have a bot on the back end and the traders that are interacting with that, and then the AI makes a decision based on its...
For simple stuff, obviously, but more complex, then you bring a live person then. But okay, just curious about that.
Yep.
Hi, thank you for your talk. Great talk. A couple of questions I have here. Would you be supporting Bitcoin Lightning in the future at all, or is that a possibility?
I mean, right now it's kind of open, what coins we support. There's no real rules to them. We've basically stated that we are only listing assets that we find to be interesting or useful at the moment. So if the community makes a case that this is a good asset, then, well, from a technical perspective, it's not hard to add it to the system. It's just another crypto there.
How about things like the Wise wallet on the fiat side, or a choice of various providers or wallet app providers? Any thoughts on that?
In terms of what app wallets?
What type of apps for fiat support there would be? How those added on, or?
Well, we support many different fiat payment methods. So Zelle was just one, but there's a very long list of them. Actually, I'll just show real quick. So if you just go to the account, traditional currency, add account, and here's the whole list. So you can do ACH transfer, Cash App, faster payments, TransferWise. There's a Western Union.
A whole bunch of different ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I did use BIS quite a lot. I was just wondering, is this going to be similar where when you first start using it, you get very limited, ability to volume, and you have to go on and build up, I guess, a reputation?
Yes, it works the same way. So initially, when you first start up the application, especially for fiat payment methods or anything that has a chargeback risk, your limits to buy Monero, because Monero is an irreversible asset, right? So your limits to how much you can buy is capped. And then there's this account signing process, and after your account is signed, and it can age for 30, 60 days, your limits go up and up.
Okay, yeah, so if you lose an account, you've got to... you lose your phone or whatever, you got to start again. I guess got to put up with that. The other thing is with the arbitration, if you, what was I going to say? Let's say you these payment methods, right? The fiat methods, they're notoriously, they can pull the plug on you any minute, right?
Right, yep.
So you can have a no-fault arbitration where you prove that you tried to make the and then you don't lose your deposit. I think you could do that with BISC a lot.
Yeah, certainly.
You just have to prove to the arbitrator.
You just show the arbitrator that like your bank wouldn't do the transaction, there's nothing I can do, and then oftentimes they work with you and just release the funds back out, penalty free. But if, of course, they think you're misbehaving, then they can penalize you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, cheers.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, great talk. I was wondering, so whenever you create those accounts, what kind of info is revealed to the peers and then to the arbitrators at time of account creation, and then whenever you use the account?
Yeah, nothing is revealed when you create the account. All those details are stored locally on your device only. And then when you take the trade, those payment details are only revealed to your peer unless a dispute is open. If a dispute is open, then those details get shared with the arbitrator. But otherwise, in the happy path default, it's only the peers get that information.
Cool. I was hoping it was that.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, then another big thank you for this, doing this over the years. My mind was blown when I first used that.
Nice.
And was surprised how good it functions for being basically peer-to-peer and completely decentralized.
Good, yeah.
So, but now a few questions with the app for phones coming up, and it's gotta be connected to the main Havino instance on the desktop.
Yeah.
Is there a way to run Havino headless on a server?
Yes. Oh, yeah. You can just run it as a daemon. Okay. And you don't even see an app like a UI.
Okay.
So you can.
And then I can connect my phone to that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Then for some of the features, with the security and the arbitrators, is there a way to do it that we could choose to not use an arbitrator and maybe increase the security to the same budget we are trading for? Would that be an option to implement?
It's been discussed quite a bit. So, in theory, you could just do 2 out of 2 multi-sig, and have no arbitrator. Of course, the risk with that is it's mutually assured destruction. So if either peer doesn't complete their end, your funds will be stuck in that wallet forever, or if their computer crashes or anything like that. So given that, when we were not interested in providing software that would expose that risk to people, at least not to start. However, with that said, in the future, if Luke and team are successful with the full chain membership proofs, it becomes possible to architect it differently, where you can do a 2 out of 2 multi-sig wallet, and then if there's a problem, then either peer can send all the funds from the multi-sig wallet to basically the arbitrator or an arbitration team, and then they can optionally reimburse. So that would allow us to do that architecture, which would be great.
Okay, perfect. And about the security, for people that don't have Monero yet, it's you can't use Havino as an on-ramp. Is the possibility to reduce the security to 0?
Yeah, so that's been actually discussed quite a bit too, and we right now we have an issue open to implement that, and the way that we're planning for it to work is that you can post an offer which has a password on it, and so and with the password encrypted offer, you can put the security deposit at 0. So then if you want to do a trade with somebody and you're okay with them not providing any security deposit, then you would just give them the password. They can take your offer at 0% security deposit.
Okay, but how would I share the password with random people that want to on-ramp to Monero without me knowing them?
Right, yeah, so that has to be done through third-party chat applications. So right now on Telegram, I'm hearing that there's a very active, communities that are constantly saying, hey, I'll do this trade with you, I'll do this trade with you. It would be through something like that to find it and do it. The reason we have to do that is because of the security risk. If you don't have any security deposit, it opens up, because it's a peer-to-peer decentralized system, so you have to think very, right? So people could spam and just go taking offers and put in no security deposits, and it basically becomes an attack. And so we just have to mitigate against that.
Oh, like an attack on the network itself?
Yeah, because if there's no security deposit, somebody with 0 Monero can go through and just start taking all the offers and just lock up lock up the order book until the arbitrator goes through and resolves them. So it would be a very easy attack vector without putting in a deposit.
Okay, yeah, okay. I didn't think about that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello. So you have a couple of questions in the live chat.
All right.
Rucknium wants to know, would you consider substituting the new Frost Monero multisig protocol developed by Cabañas for Havenos, I don't know how you pronounce it, current multisig protocol? So would you add Frost Monero multisig protocol?
Well, I mean, I think it would be great if we could be using his tech, because I'm aware that Monero's current multisig is limited, and but you know, the way that it's built right now with those libraries, everything is built on top of Monero project. So that's just where the dependencies are. In order to support something like that, it would probably be best to take his work and somehow expose it through the Monero project, and then I could inherit it no problem.
Okay, and XMR family wants to know, what are your thoughts on lowering the deposit, especially for larger transactions?
I mean, so this again gets back to the smaller the security deposit, the more risk that there is that people can just take offers with no intention of going through with them. So it's sort of a balancing act. Right now it's at 15%. I think right now most people are comfortable with that, but I think that the real way forward is to be able to offer those 0% security deposits with the encrypted offers, just to maintain security, given that, you know, we have to think very like in an adversarial way, given that it's just an open network, anybody can do anything. So.
Okay, those were the questions. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wants to ask something?
Cool. All right, thanks guys, thanks.
All right, so next up we have a presentation that's gonna happen via live stream from Sally Liu from Bitmain, and she's in charge of proof of work operations at Bitmain. I'm not sure if Bitmain is mining Monero, but we're gonna find out. Maybe they made some new ASIC machines and you guys need to do a hard fork once again, change the algo. Who knows what we're gonna find out? Are we ready for?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, hello everyone, and thank you for the welcome. And well, I really regret I'm not able to join you in the Mexico City in person, but I'm excited to be part of this event virtually. And my name is Yiming Liu, and right now I'm leading the Proof of Work ecosystem department at Bitmain, and it's a privilege to connect with this vibrant Monero community. And I'd like to thanks for the organizer for inviting us to be part of this meaningful gathering. Yeah. And before everything, let me begin a brief introduction to Bitmain. We founded in 2013, and we have consistently focusing on developing cutting-edge mining technology while supporting the sustainability and security of the proof-of-work networks. And as a global leader in the blockchain hardware, Bitmain is committed to driving the power efficiency and innovation, and help to build a stronger decentralized ecosystem for the crypto world. And we all knowing that in the crypto space, miners and ecosystem builders sometimes seems like they're operate in different universe with different priorities and different goals. But in the reality, their fates are closely tied, and both mining and ecosystem flourish, the blockchain network as a whole can reach new heights. And at Bitmain, we recognize these interdependencies as the fundamental and the fundamentals of the proof of work ecosystem, and which is why we established the POW ecosystem departments in Bitmain. And our mission is simple, just to support the growth of the proof of work networks, and with the right results, funding, and infrastructures. And over these years, so our mission is to support the growth of the POW networks. And over these years, we have sponsored and collaborated with numerous POW chains, including Lacon, Falcon, Cabañas, and recently Bells, and consistently with the Ethereum Classic. And just recently, we partnered with the ETC Grants DAO to launch the ETC Ambassador Program, which offer the direct financial rewards to the ETC supporters. And speaking of which, if anyone here is curious, we are running long-term giveaways on the ETC Grants DAO Twitter account. And there will be, I remember it's 32 participate will win the prize with a top prize value $2,000. And feel free to check it out if you thought you're lucky, and you can just check it out. Yeah. And coming back to the Monero, I think this time for the sponsorships of this event is a great step forward in strengthening our connection with the Bitmain and your communities. And I'm generously impressed by the energy and the powers I see in the Monero supporters. And I always say that we should never underestimate the powers of our strong communities. And this is the cornerstone of any successful cryptocurrency. Yeah. And well, the result we invest in the POW projects don't always bring immediately returns. We remain committed because we are believing in the long-term values of collaborations. With time, effort, and trust, this investments will pay off. Yeah. And also in the crypto world, we believe that the sustainable growth doesn't come from the coupled competitions, but from the collaborations and the shared success. And Bitmain's approach is grounded in this belief, building partnerships, fostering sustainability, and aiming for mutual progress. Yeah. And by supporting POW ecosystem today, we're laying groundwork for an even stronger blockchain industrial tomorrow. And so this times this connection between us is more than just Bitmain's first formal support for Monero communities events. Is mark the beginnings that of what we hope will be a long and meaningful partnerships. And to the Monero communities, and the Monero communities has always been a trailblazer in the blockchain space. So we are proud to take this first step with you, and we're looking forward to deepen our collaborations to help the Monero reach even greater heights. Yeah. And spoken of what Hao said before about the mining machines in the Monero, let me highlight a product we introduced specifically for the Monero communities. And back in September 2023, we launched the ANTMINER X5, and this is designed to support Monero's RandMax algorithm. And what is remarkable that even today, over years after it released, the X5 continues to deliver outstanding performance and profitabilities for the miners. And X5's power efficiencies and optimized design reflects Bitmain's dedications to creating the high-performance tools and tolerate to the unique needs of the POW networks. Yeah, and we're excited to see the continuous contributions of these miners to the Monero networks, and I hope it empowers the miners to further strengthen this exceptional ecosystem. Yeah, and in closing, I want to thanks again for everyone in these communities and for your warm welcomes for us. Yes, and thank you. I'm looking forward to explore how Bitmain can contribute further to the Monero networks in more meaningful ways. Yeah.
Hello. Can you guys hear us?
Yes, yes.
All right. Sorry about that. This is the first virtual presentation we've done here, so we hadn't worked out the AV yet with communicating. Thank you so much for doing this. We wish you could have been here in person or reps from Bitmain. That would have been amazing. And to even perhaps see the equipment, it would have been cool. Maybe next year, though. But can we ask you some questions? I know there's people that are here watching live that would love to ask you some questions.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, fantastic. All right, hold on.
There's a slight echo again.
Are the miners sold for the purposes of mining XMR? Do they mine Monero before they're shipped on behalf of Bitmain?
Yes. It's launched in the September 2023.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, it's launched in the September 2023. I think it's before the algorithm changed or after.
No, what I'm asking is, when you sell miner, has it already been used to mine Monero before it's sold?
Yes.
Okay. So my second question would be, does Bitmain participate in the buying and selling and swapping of cryptos, or do you just produce miners?
Yeah, we just produce the miners.
Can you tell us about some of your larger customers?
Yeah.
How many large customers have shown an interest in buying a lot of Monero miners?
You want to try? Go ahead.
喂，你好，你可以听我们吗？
I think it should be.
你可以听我们吗？
We have the purchase limited, but and also after we launched this, sold out really quickly. Yeah.
Are there more units on the way?
Oh, what? Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Are there more? I'm going to have a guy who can speak Chinese ask the question.
Oh, that's great.
Because it might make it easier for you to respond to the question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
喂，你好，你可以听我们吗？
可以的。
好。So what's the question you want?
Well, actually, we have another question from the online audience, which was, have you ever considered selling miners as space heaters? Like, unironically, have you ever considered selling mining units to heat a room?
Yeah. 你可以用你的 miner， 差不多 like 空调一样的，给热，你知道吗？你明白我的说吗？
Okay. I do have a question about sort of the ASIC machines, or sort of ASICs or CPU. Any idea what the technology is in these machines of mine Monero? Are we dealing with CPUs or specialized ASICs or certain types of CPUs like ARM, or are you free to comment on that? Hear me through?
Are they asking you questions?
No, I think I didn't hear anything from the
camera. Yeah, because they're live at the conference, and I think someone wanted there are a few questions there.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to find a translator for you, so it's easier for you.
Yeah, it's okay. Maybe you can tap it with the private chat, and I can say that. Yeah.
Oh, okay, here I guess here's one that's someone asked.
Yes, are they still manufacturing more X5 units? Yes, because we considering the total network hash rate, we have purchased limits on all the mining machines for except the BTC miners. And because we are producing these machines, we also aim to ensures the network security. Yes, so right now I think we will not producing more. Yeah, but
Is with respect to Monero.
But after the total network hash rate become to a new height, yeah, we might considering manufacturing more. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I think the camera people at the dome.
Can you hear my
Every
question?
time you are not speaking, mute yourself because we get an echo from Sally. No, I'm telling the dome people. So I think they might have gotten the mic to work. Let's see.
You guys hear us?
We can hear you, but
You could hear us?
yes, now,
All right.
but every time
Okay.
you're speaking, mute yourself.
Okay, you ready for a question now? Okay.
Yes.
My question is, with respect to the Monero miners, what type of technology are you using? Are you using an ASIC or a specialized CPU?
Oh, is this?
Mute yourself, Arctic.
This question is pretty much outrage of my. I think there's better if we can have a product man here to answer this question. This a little bit out of my range. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no worries. I mean, maybe you could put us in touch with somebody, though, at some point. The Monero community definitely has a lot of...
You have to unmute yourself every time you talk.
Yeah, no worries on that. But maybe you could put us in touch with somebody more technical there, because the Monero community would have a ton of questions for them and would love to engage with them. That would be fantastic.
Yes, maybe next year we will invite here to more technical. Yeah.
So the next question, both from our audience here and the online audience, there are many people who would be interested in a mining space heater. So basically using the heat exhaust from a miner to heat a space. Is that something that you guys have ever considered manufacturing?
Yes. We have the heat recycle things, and also right now we launched the end rack, which is the something like this. Yeah.
Okay, good. Is there like a push to make the firmware and the software open source for your equipment?
Sorry, can you repeat it again?
I don't know if you know what open source software or free and open source software is, but it's putting the code out into the public so people can mess with it. Would Bitmain be interested in putting out their source code so people can modify their devices?
Yes, I think no. for these questions.
What, can you say that again? It was a little quiet. What's that?
No.
Okay.
All right, any other questions or things you want to say? Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate your time and greatly appreciate your sponsorship. Yeah. She left already. Okay. I was gonna say, definitely get us in touch with that technical person. We definitely want to get in touch with that person. What's that?
I think she's still there.
They definitely do. They definitely do. All right, who do we have up next? What's going on next?
We have another list. All right, so up next we have Rucknium, who is an empirical microeconomist and Monero Research Lab researcher. He's also going to join by live stream.
Welcome to my presentation. Hard data on banking the unbanked presentation cryptocurrency. This talk is written by Rucknium. The audio is voiced by Xenu. In the unbanked financial tech apps are failing to serve the unbanked. Adults in the United States without bank accounts are far less likely to be using a payment app compared to other adults. Half as likely to have any sort of payment app, about a third as likely to have PayPal, and highly unlikely to have Venmo. This slow uptake of payment apps is notable because many commenters have been expecting fintech to create new, cost-effective, and convenient avenues of access for people without access to traditional banking accounts. Claire Green, Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, 2023. Is cryptocurrency the answer? A purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. Satoshi Nakamoto, 2008. About me. I'm an empirical microeconomist affiliated with the Monero Research Lab. I research improvements to Monero's privacy and security using statistical analysis. Some of my work is funded by Monero's community crowdfunding system, the CCS, but the research in this talk was done unfunded on my own time. Slides and code are available at github.com/Rucknium. Banking the unbanked? Digital payments are increasingly important for accessing the necessities of modern life, but not everybody can get credit cards and bank accounts. In theory, cryptocurrencies can fill the digital payments gap for people on the margins of the financial system, but in practice, do people who lack traditional bank accounts actually tend to use cryptocurrency for payments? According to new high-quality data from the United States and EU, the answer may be yes. Research questions. Using data from rigorous surveys, what share of people are using cryptocurrencies at all? This is the extensive margin, available in USA and EU data. For people who use cryptocurrencies, how much are they spending? This is the intensive margin, available in EU data only. What are the general demographics, gender, age of people using cryptocurrencies? Controlling for demographics and country, do people with low access to the traditional financial system tend to use cryptocurrencies more? What motivates people to use cryptocurrencies as a means of payment? To be using a payment app data compared to other adults. United States, half as likely to have the household economics, about a third as likely to have cryptocurrency questions, and highly unlikely to have 2022. This slow uptake of payment apps is notable because study on the payment attitudes of consumers in the Euro area to create new cryptocurrency questions in 2022. Convenient avenues of surveys are conducted on behalf of the USA and EU central banks. To tradition, we need quality data. There are some other data sets collected by private groups that focus on cryptocurrency users. But the recruitment process is focused too much purely on cryptocurrency users can bias results. The survey methodology one party to another without going through a financial institution. A small sample size means that few results are statistically significant. The United States and EU central bank surveys have rigorous, balanced recruitment processes using statistical analysis. Focus only on cryptocurrency. Some of my work is fun. Have large sample sizes. Monero's community. Their survey methodology will be described in detail since I expect the CCS members of this audience will be skeptical of any data released by central banks. But the limitations of this research, compared to the rest of the world, a larger share of people are already banked. Digital payments are included can get credit cards. Statistical methods here measure the association and correlation of variables, but not a measurement of X causing Y. We do not have a natural experiment or other system, but in practice, do people who lack traditional bank accounts actually tend to use crypto in the United States and the EU? The answer may be yes. Research questions. Using data from rigorous surveys, what share of people are using cryptocurrencies at all? This is the extensive margin available in USA and EU data. For people who use cryptocurrencies, how much are they spending? This is the intensive margin available in EU data only. What are the general demographics, gender, age of people using cryptocurrencies? Controlling for demographics in country, do people with low access to the traditional financial system tend to use cryptocurrencies payment? Data sources. United States, Survey of the Household Economics Decision Making. Cryptocurrency questions in 2021, 2022, and 2023 area. Cryptocurrency questions in 2022. The surveys are conducted on behalf of the USA and EU central banks. We need quality data. There are some other data sets collected by private groups that focus on cryptocurrency users, but recruitment processes focus a small sample size means that few results are statistically significant. The United States and EU central bank surveys have rigorous, balanced recruitment processes. Do not focus only on cryptocurrency users. Have large sample sizes. Expect members of this audience will be skeptical of any data released by central banks. Limitations of this research. Compared to the rest of the world, a larger share of people are already banked in the United States and EU. Statistical methods here measure the association and correlation of variables, but not a measurement of X causing Y. We do not have an as causation. USA and EU central banks. We need quality data. There are some other data sets collected by private groups that focus on cryptocurrency users, but recruitment processes focus too much on cryptocurrency users can bias results. The survey methodology does not represent a statistical population. A small sample size means that few results are statistically significant. The United States and EU central bank surveys have rigorous, balanced recruitment processes. Do not focus only on cryptocurrency users. Have large sample sizes. Their survey methodology will be described in detail since I expect members of this audience will be skeptical of any data released by central banks. Limitations of this research. Compared to the rest of the world, a larger share of people are already banked in the United States and EU. Statistical methods here measure the association and correlation of variables, but not a measurement of X causing Y. We do not have a natural experiment or other circumstances that would allow interpretation of the results as causation. Lessons for promoting adoption are unclear. If a group is already using cryptocurrency more than other groups, maybe adoption efforts can focus on that group. But if a group uses cryptocurrency less, maybe that's an untapped market that would respond to adoption efforts. USA Shed, 2021 to 2023. Since 2013, the Federal Reserve Board has conducted the Survey of Household Economics and Decision-Making, SHED, which measures the economic well-being of U.S. households and identifies potential risks to their finances. This survey includes modules on a range of topics and of current relevance to financial well-being, including credit access and behaviors, savings, retirement, economic fragility, and education and student loans. USA SHED methodology. The SHED is sponsored by the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. Staff of the Federal Reserve Board wrote the survey questions in consultation with other Federal Reserve System staff, outside academics, and professional survey experts. Ipsos, a private consumer research firm, administered the survey using its Knowledge Panel, a nationally representative probability-based online panel. Since 2009, Ipsos has selected respondents for Knowledge Panel based on address-based sampling. SHED respondents were then selected from this panel. According to Ipsos, 9.7% of individuals contacted to join Knowledge Panel agreed to join. Among those who agreed to join the panel, 61% completed the initial profile survey and became a panel member. Taking all the stages of recruitment together, the cumulative response rate was 4.1%. To increase survey participation and completion among hard-to-reach demographic groups, board staff and Ipsos used a targeted communication plan with monetary incentives. The target groups, young adults ages 18 to 29, adults with less than a high school degree, adults with household income under $50,000 who are under the age of 60, and those who are a race or ethnicity other than white, non-Hispanic, received additional email reminders during the field period, as well as additional monetary incentives. All survey respondents not in a target group received a $5 incentive payment after survey completion. Respondents in the target groups received a $15 incentive. The digital divide and other differences in internet usage could bias participation in online surveys, so recruited panel members who did not have a computer or internet access were provided with a laptop and access to the internet to complete the surveys. USA shed sample sizes. Survey respondents could stay in the sample from 1 year to the next. Most survey respondents stayed in the sample for only 1 year. The data is panel longitudinal with high attrition. Sample size. In 2021 was 11,400. In 2022 was 11,667. 3,752 total were also in the 2021 sample. In 2023 it was 11,400. 3,295 total were also in the 2021 sample. 3,870 total were also in the 2022 sample. I pulled together the responses for multiple years to increase the sample size. Each person's response is included only once if they are in the data in multiple years. USA shed 2021 to 2023 cryptocurrency survey questions. Basic cryptocurrency questions added in 2021, added more cryptocurrency questions in 2022, removed a few cryptocurrency questions in 2023. No new ones were added. Question. In the past year, have you done the following with cryptocurrency, such as Bitcoin or Ethereum? Bought cryptocurrency or held as an investment. Used cryptocurrency to buy something or make a payment. Used cryptocurrency to send money to friends or family. Cryptocurrency use. 9.3% of people have used cryptocurrency as investment or payment in the past year. Of those who have used cryptocurrency as investment or payment, 83% for investment only, 7% for payment only, 10% for both purposes. 1.4% use cryptocurrency to send money to friends or family. 0.4% use cryptocurrency to send money to friends or family living outside the United States. 0.3% use cryptocurrency to buy something in person. 1% use cryptocurrency to buy something online. 0.4% use cryptocurrency to pay a bill online. Using a cryptocurrency ATM. 0.6% used to convert cash to cryptocurrency. 1.1% used to withdraw cash. 0.4% used to make a payment. 0.7% used to send money to friends or family. Confounding correlations. We want to know if people with low access to the traditional financial system tend to use cryptocurrencies more, but we don't want to mismeasure the relationship between variables. We may mistake the influence of one variable for the influence of another one. This plot shows a visual correlation matrix of some of the main variables we are interested in. Every variable here has some correlation with every other variable. If we take the simple relationship between using cryptocurrency as payment and lacking a bank account, we may miss the relationship between those variables and age and gender. Older people are less likely to use cryptocurrency. They are also less likely to lack a bank account. Being careful about confounding variables. The correlations between demographics, cryptocurrency use, and use of the traditional financial systems can cause omitted variable bias. We use a statistical method to control for demographics and other confounding variables. Logistic regression. Logistic regression allows us to estimate how variables are associated with a difference in the odds of a person's choice to do something or not, or of any outcome. The odds provides a number that is easy to interpret even if the probability of something is low to begin with. For example, some environmental toxin may increase the odds of a rare cancer by 100%, going from 0.1% to 0.2% probability. People who are exposed to the environmental toxin still have a low chance of getting the rare cancer, but the odds are much higher. It makes sense to use odds instead of a raw probability because use of a cryptocurrency is rare. The odds of an event is the probability of the event happening divided by the probability of the event not happening. The results of the logistical regression will be given as people who have characteristic X have Z% higher or lower odds of doing Y, or 1 more year of age is associated with Z% higher or lower odds of doing Y. Remember that odds can decrease by 100% at most. Odds can increase to 1,000 or even 1,000,000%. Formally, the results will transform the beta hat estimated coefficients of the logistic regressions. The significant stars are for the beta hat coefficients. Single, double, and triple stars are for statistical significance at the 10%, 5%, and 1% levels, respectively. If a coefficient has no stars, it can basically be ignored in the results. Odds of owning cryptocurrency and payment use by gender and age. This first logistical regression estimates the relationship between gender, age, and using cryptocurrency. Men have 133% higher odds of using cryptocurrency as an investment compared to women. They also have 98% higher odds of using cryptocurrency as payment. Next, 1 more year of age decreases the odds of using cryptocurrency as an investment by about 3%. 1 more year of age decreases the odds of using cryptocurrency as a payment by about 4%. Today, cryptocurrency is a young man's game. Let's look at the association between using traditional banking and cryptocurrency as payment. Controlling for gender and age, not having a bank account increases the odds of using cryptocurrency as payment by 61%. Lacking a credit card also increases the odds of using cryptocurrency as payment, but by a lower 36%. We see stronger association for using non-bank checking. Buying a non-bank money order increases the odds of using cryptocurrency as payment by 270%. Cashing a check at a non-bank service provider increases the odds of using cryptocurrency as payment by 200%. Next up is using non-bank loans. The numbers are even larger here. Getting a payday loan increases the odds of using cryptocurrency as payment by over 600%. Getting an auto or pawn shop loan increases the odds of using cryptocurrency as payment by over 600% too. Using buy now, pay later at retail stores increases the odds of using cryptocurrency as payment by 300%. Getting an advance on your tax refund increases the odds of using cryptocurrency as payment by 850%. Access to formal sources of credit is another way to measure financial marginalization. If you have an excellent or good credit score, you are less likely to use cryptocurrency as payment, about 40 to 60% lower odds. This could suggest that poor credit history pushes people to see cryptocurrency as an alternative. Next, applying and being rejected for credit increases the odds of using cryptocurrency as payment by 225%. Saying that you have experienced any discrimination in society increases the odds of using cryptocurrency as payment by 120%. Saying that you have experienced any discrimination specifically in banking increases the odds of using cryptocurrency as payment by 260%. Reasons for using cryptocurrency as payment. Question: what was the main reason you used cryptocurrency to buy something, make a payment, or send money? These are mutually exclusive reasons. Respondents had to choose just one main reason. The table ranks the responses by most common to least. The recipient preferring cryptocurrency was the top reason, 24%. Sending money faster was the number 2 reason, at 20%. Privacy was 18%. Because cryptocurrency is cheaper is ranked 4th, at 13%. Safer was 9%, and don't trust banks was at 5%. US Shed Summary. Most people who have used cryptocurrency are using it as an investment instead as a means of payment. Being young and male is associated with cryptocurrency utilization. There were a lot of ways to measure financial marginalization, from having a bank account to getting payday loans. Almost every metric showed that people who are on the fringes of the traditional financial system are more likely to use cryptocurrency as payment. EU Space. The study on the payment attitudes of consumers in the Euro area, space, looks at how customers use different payment methods in Euro area countries. It also explores their payment preferences and perceptions concerning access to and acceptance of these means of payment. SPACE helps the European Central Bank to understand consumer demand and evolving market trends and facilitates the implementation of the Eurosystem's cash and payments strategies. The study was first conducted in 2019, and follow-up SPACE studies will be carried out on a regular basis to continue our research on payment trends. EU Space methodology. The fieldwork was carried out by the market research company Cantor Public in 17 of the 19 Euro area countries, i.e. with the exception of Germany and the Netherlands. Germany and Netherlands conduct their own similar survey, but that data isn't included in SPACE. There is a general questionnaire and a one-day diary of purchases. SPACE 2022 was a mixed-mode survey. Recruitment and interviews were conducted in two different modes: computer-assisted telephone interview and computer-assisted web interview. EU SPACE 2022 sample size: 39,766 total respondents, 7,371 online purchases recorded in the one-day purchasing diary. Respondents were supposed to exclude recurring payments like phone bills. Each respondent could record up to 10 online purchases in the one-day diary. EU cryptocurrency use: 3.6% of people have cryptocurrency. Of those who have cryptocurrency, they have it for these purposes: 63% for investment only, 13% for payment only, 24% for both purposes. Here is a plot of the share of people owning cryptocurrency ranked by country. Notice the confidence intervals. The country ranks are fuzzy. Luxembourg and Slovenia are ranked at the top with about 8% of people owning cryptocurrency. Lithuania and Italy are in the bottom with about 2% of people owning cryptocurrency. We have a lot of variation here, so we will use country as a control variable in the logistic regressions later. Here is the same graph, but specifically for use of cryptocurrency as a means of payment. The numbers range from 3% to 1%. We have regression results for cryptocurrency use by gender and age. Like in the USA, men are more likely to use cryptocurrency as investment or payment. The gender divide is more lopsided in investment activities than payment activities. In other words, women are less likely to use cryptocurrency as a means of payment than men, but they are much less likely to buy cryptocurrency as an investment than men.
In the EU data, older people are less likely to get involved in cryptocurrency.
Gender and investment. Is the gender divide for using cryptocurrency as an investment unique to cryptocurrency? The survey also asked if respondents had stocks, mutual fund shares, bonds, or similar financial investment products. Odds of having a traditional financial investment by gender and age. According to the results, men are much more likely to have a traditional financial investment. People answering other to the gender question were less likely to have a traditional investment. With traditional financial investment, we see opposite results on age compared to cryptocurrency. Each additional year of age increases the odds of having a traditional financial investment by 1%. Now looking at the association between having traditional banking services and using cryptocurrency as payment. Lacking credit and debit cards increases the odds of using cryptocurrency as payment by 40%. There are no stars on the lacks payment amount coefficient, so it is not statistically significant in this regression. This EU data does not have much data on financial marginalization because this survey focuses on payments. The USA survey had a broader set of subjects on overall financial health. So let's move on to analyzing the EU data on cash and cashless preferences. Payment preference: cash versus cashless. The EU Space survey did not ask why cryptocurrency users use it for payment. Cryptocurrency is supposed to be peer-to-peer electronic cash, permissionless to spend and receive. Ownership is based on possession, not identity documents. No need to have an account with any institution. How do attitudes toward cash interact with cryptocurrency use as payment? Survey question: if you were offered various payment methods in a shop, what would be your preference? Cash, card, or other cashless payment, or no preference? Payment preference. Preferring to pay cash is associated with lower odds of using cryptocurrency as payment. For cryptocurrency users, this may mean that the preference to pay with electronic forms of payment overwhelms any of the permissionless characteristics of cash. Advantages of cash. For you personally, what are the three most important advantages of cash as compared with card payments? If respondents said that quick payment was an advantage of cash, their odds of using cryptocurrency as payment were 50% higher. People who like that cash protects privacy had 57% greater odds of using cryptocurrency as payment. This result is related to what we saw in the USA data. Many cryptocurrency users saw its perceived privacy as a main reason to pay with it. For some reason, people who listed cash's advantage of keeping you aware of how much you spend had lower odds of using cryptocurrency as payment. Behavior: cash reserves. Some people like to keep cash at home or somewhere else for various reasons, as precautionary reserve or as an alternative way of saving. Do you personally keep extra cash that is not in your wallet, purse, or pocket? Roughly, how much cash do you generally keep at home or somewhere else that is not in your wallet, purse, or pocket? People who have at least cash reserves are more likely to use cryptocurrency as payment. People who have large cash reserves are especially likely to use cryptocurrency as payment. Having more than 10,000 euro in cash increases the odds of using cryptocurrency as a means of payment by 420%. One-day online payments diary. Please report any online payments you personally made. Please exclude any regular recurring payments such as rent, telephone or utility bills, or subscriptions, streaming services, newspapers, etc. How did you pay for this purchase? Online payments diary. Purpose. Charitable donations were much more likely to be made with cryptocurrency. A payment for charitable purchases had over 900% higher odds of being paid with cryptocurrency. Purchases of luxury goods was negatively associated with cryptocurrency use. The negative 100% means that none of the luxury goods purchased in the data was purchased with cryptocurrency. Purchasing financial products like insurance, investments, and crypto assets was highly associated with being paid for with cryptocurrency. I interpret this as people counting trades of crypto to crypto as purchases made with cryptocurrency. Purchases of household-related services like repairs, home renovation, car services also had higher odds of being made with cryptocurrency. Online payments diary. Payment amount. I looked at whether the payment amount for cryptocurrency payments were smaller or larger than purchases made with other forms of payment. Neither the mean nor median were statistically different. The mean payment amount in the data was about 60 euro. The median was 25 euro. Total value of cryptocurrency online payments in the EU. We can multiply the payments diary sample by each country's population to estimate the total value of cryptocurrency that was spent in online transactions for goods and services in 2022 in the EU. This is the first reliable estimate of aggregate cryptocurrency spending in a large geographic region that I am aware of. The estimate is 4.1 billion euro. The 90% confidence interval is 1.7 to 6.6 billion euro. EU space summary. Some evidence that people who do not access traditional banking are more likely to use cryptocurrency as a means of payment. People who like cash for its speed and privacy are more likely to use cryptocurrency as a means of payment. Donating to charitable causes is associated with cryptocurrency use. Give me a one-handed economist. All my economists say, on the one hand, then, but on the other. President Harry S. Truman. This would not be a balanced presentation if I didn't give both good and bad news for cryptocurrency. Pessimistic picture for overall cryptocurrency adoption as a means of payment. In the EU, in 2022, 1.3% of people used cryptocurrency as payment. In the United States, cryptocurrency as payment actually decreased. In 2021, from 1.8%, in 2022 to 1.7%, and in 2023 to 1.4%. Another data set. We will use the USA Survey and Diary of Consumer Payment Choice, also managed by the Federal Reserve. Compared to the SHED data, there is a smaller sample size, about 4,000 per year, but it asks about cryptocurrency ownership for many years, from 2015 to 2023, and the main reason for ownership. SHED only asked why cryptocurrency was used as payment specifically, not why it was owned at all. Survey questions. Do you own any cryptocurrency? If yes, please tell us your primary reason for owning cryptocurrency. I use it to buy goods and services in the United States. I use it to make remittances or other international payments. It is an investment. It allows me to make payments anonymously. It uses secure blockchain technology to prevent loss and fraud. I am interested in new technologies. I do not trust banks. I do not trust the government or US dollar. Other. For data display, some categories are grouped together. The top chart shows the percentage of people in the United States who own cryptocurrency. From 2015 to 2017, only about 0.5% owned cryptocurrency. Keep this low percentage in mind when interpreting the data on reasons for owning cryptocurrency, which will come from a small number of people in those early years, subject to greater statistical uncertainty. The 2017 to 2018 boom in cryptocurrency value increased the percentage to 2% for the 2018 to 2019 survey years. During a second boom in 2020, the percentage rose to about 10%, where it has stayed, or even decreased a little in 2023. Next is the primary reasons for owning cryptocurrency. In early years, the investment motivation was one of many important reasons, shown as the orange line here. By 2021, investment dominated the list of reasons, with 80% saying it was the primary reason. Decreases in the investment reason in 2022 and 2023 coincided with a bust in the market capitalization of cryptocurrency. The yellow line in the chart tracks the percentage of people saying payments was the primary reason for owning cryptocurrency. It bounced around a lot in the first 3 years of the data. Then it settled at around 8% in 2018 to 2019. In the most recent years, the percentage has been about 2%. The blue line in the chart tracks the percentage of people saying that the primary reason for owning cryptocurrency is because they didn't trust banks, the government, or the US dollar. It followed a path similar to the payments line, bouncing around, then 5 to 10%, and now 2% in recent years. Conclusion. There is strong evidence in the United States and some evidence in the EU that people who are marginalized from mainstream financial services turn to cryptocurrency to serve their needs. Privacy is a priority for users of cryptocurrency. These themes fit with the Monero project's mission to provide confidential, censorship-resistant, low-cost, peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world. Population-wide adoption of cryptocurrency as a means of payment is low. Using cryptocurrency as a means of payment may remain a niche activity for the foreseeable future. We will now go to the Q&A session. Thank you.
Hello, hello. Can they hear us? Can you guys hear us?
Yeah, hi.
Oh, great.
Hola.
All right. Yeah, we wanted to do some Q&A with people in the audience. Are you guys ready for that?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. How's our sound when I talk?
Okay. Good. Yeah, this is kind of weird because I can't see you guys. I guess I feel like what AI feels like.
Yeah, all good. Sorry about that you can't see us.
I'll take a question.
Okay. Yeah, so anybody in the audience have any questions? Come on up, please. Really? Come on, guys. I wasn't in the room, so I wasn't able to. Okay, here we go.
All right, thanks for the talk. I guess my question is, you indicated that in one of the surveys, I think it was the SHED data from the US, that like usage for payments had been decreasing from like 1.8% down to something lower than that. Was there any indication or hypothesis on like why that might be happening?
Were you able to hear that question?
Yeah, I'm waiting for Rucknium to respond.
Oh, okay. Rucknium is typing, and
I'm speaking on behalf of him.
Yes. No, that's fine. You're doing a great
It's
job.
like that scene in Bruce Almighty. You know, I'm talking about. All right, whatever.
Oh, good.
Yeah, Rucknium says, in my opinion, because the boom turned into a bust by 2023, but the data doesn't say that directly.
All right. Any other questions or questions in the chat? What's that?
I can throw a question.
Oh, wait, we're going to throw one more question.
If he's taking questions. Was there a value for the aggregate payment usage in Europe versus the United States? Just for reference.
Yeah, 1 second.
Is he still typing?
Actually, just responded. Sorry, there's an echo. It's annoying.
Can you mute us on this side? I think there's an echo.
Yeah. Okay. He says there was an aggregate payment data for the EU, but the USA survey did not have that data, so we did not compare.
Okay. All right, guys. I think that's all the questions we got over here. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you, Rucknium. Rolf van Wegberg is also going to be talking about marketplaces. He's going to be talking about marketplaces where the rumor is Monero is king. And whether or not you think or you believe that dark markets are positive, or add positive aspects to humanity or not. The fact is they exist. They're the most free markets that we know of, and they choose Monero. Rolf is going to go into it, but we all know why they choose Monero, because those who actually have a need to use a utility that allows people to transact without surveillance or censorship and do it in an anonymous and private way, they choose Monero. But Rolf is going to actually give us some real insights into whether or not that's really the case. Take it away, Rolf.
Thank you so much. Great to be back. I was here, or not here, but in Miami 2 years ago, at the first MoneroTopia. Yeah. So I actually work at a Dutch university. I don't know if you guys know where the Netherlands is, but you probably heard of Amsterdam. So I'm working in Delft, and I'm leading a research group that does research into what we call the cybercrime ecosystem. And one of the aspects thereof is what we call dark markets. And indeed, what I'd like to do today, and I don't think you should hold all your questions way until the end. So please also interrupt me, raise your hand or shout or whatever if you have any questions during my talk. What I would like to do is indeed nuance that perspective of marketplaces on the dark web, so-called dark markets, where Monero apparently is king. And what I would like to do is talk you through the research we have been doing on these marketplaces to establish from an empirical standpoint, so not from a, basically an anecdotal standpoint, if Monero is actually used on these marketplaces, why or why not, and maybe there are other places in the criminal ecosystem where Monero is used. Any of you, question to you, any of you see my talk in 2022 or attended the talk in 2022 or, okay, cool, or listen to the podcast episode that Doug and I made? Yeah, okay, cool. Thank you so much. So let's start with where we left off last time. So I'm doing a little recap of the story behind today's story. So the story of Monero becoming dark market's favorite, at least that is the story. And we're going to find out if that is an anecdotal story or if that is actually the truth. Marketplaces on the dark web have existed for quite some time. And you know these marketplaces by the names of Silk Road, and we had a marketplace called White House, and now we have moved on to other marketplaces. So what they do is they use the Tor system, the Tor network, to provide anonymous ways of using the internet. So making a marketplace anonymous in that sense. But there's, of course, the financial aspect of that too. And Ross Ulbricht combined those two things. So he combined, cryptocurrencies, in essence, firstly Bitcoin, and then used the Tor network to combine those two into creating a marketplace where, at least that was his thoughts, everything could be traded. So we pick up the story when there's little audio feedback in this microphone. I'm just waving. Could you, is this still open? No. Okay, then I don't know. Let's see if this is better. No, okay, well, I don't know. Any case, so we pick up the story when Monero came to the show. And the last time, and also I talked about this during the podcast, the last time I talked about this, I tried to view this from two perspectives, right? So on a marketplace system, there are always three actors involved. You have the marketplace, you have the vendor who sells something, and you have the buyer. And all three have to stand behind a way of payment to actually make that happen. And what we know is that administrators of marketplaces are not, well, in the beginning, we're not so much looking forward to integrating Monero into their marketplaces. Why was that? One of the key aspects of trusting a marketplace is that you can actually use the marketplace as a middleman, as a third party. Let me explain that. So the marketplace acts as an intermediary between a vendor and a buyer, to make sure that anonymity does not lead to scams. So that means that within the Bitcoin ecosystem, these admins were using an escrow system so that the marketplace receives the Bitcoin paid for a certain product and only delivers or only gives the Bitcoins paid to the vendor when actually the buyer indicates that he or she has received the actual product. With Monero, as you know, that is a little bit harder to do. Why is that? Because with Bitcoin, you can use a so-called multi-sig wallet, wherein there are three signatures. There are three signatories, and you need two signatures to go make a payment. And because of that, and because of Monero not supporting that, as least that I know, vendors were incentivized to use it, to use Monero. However, buyers were dragging their feet. Why? Because buyers still had a choice to pay between Bitcoin and Monero. And why is that? Because marketplaces were not moving from Bitcoin to Monero. They were adding Monero to the available payment options. So basically, I know that I am presenting this just after lunch, so I thought, let's make this as fun as possible. So the remainder of the talk is only memes and me talking. So from the perspective of the dark market admins, from the perspective of, in this case, the people who are running the market, and basically are determining how vendors and buyers should pay, the first choice to make is how do we actually then facilitate payment? Well, that is a dilemma in and of itself, because on the one hand, these marketplaces want to support anonymity. And as you know, the Bitcoin ecosystem is way less anonymous than the Monero ecosystem. So if these markets would in fact let anonymity take like the leading role, then it would make sense for them to only say that Monero is the preferred choice of payment. However, what actually happens is that they added Bitcoin and Monero together as the two payment options there are currently at these markets. Does anybody have any idea why? Yeah, please go ahead.
Because a lot of people still are like just using Bitcoin and haven't swapped to Monero, and they're going where the market is. So if they're going to lose a ton of market share because they're not offering Bitcoin as a payment option, they're not going to choose to do only Monero.
Precisely. So thank you so much for putting your hand up and coming forward like this, because this is actually exactly the thing that's happening. There are economics here that are involved, and these economics dictate that the buyer is always right. And what I mean to say by that is that if you have people that are using your marketplace and are going to a different marketplace because they find it a hassle, if that is the case or not doesn't really matter. If they find it a hassle to pay in Monero, basically to first acquire Monero and then actually use Monero to do payments on these dark markets, that means that the marketplaces that only accept Monero would lose market share. And that would mean, in turn, that they would flock to other marketplaces that also accept Bitcoins. And that means, because how does this work? Administrators get a percentage of each transaction that happens at the market. So there's an economic incentive for the market administrators to get as much customers to the market as possible. Vendors and buyers. So what they opted to do is keep Bitcoin as a payment option, and alongside that, offer Monero. So what you then still can do as a vendor is say, I sell something and I only want to get paid in Monero. But then you're competing with other vendors on the same marketplace or on different marketplaces who might sell the same product but also accept Bitcoin. So basically, vendors are waiting for buyers who are willing to pay in Monero. But, as you know, one does not simply pay in Monero. It is still a little bit more difficult to do than you have with Bitcoin. This is also, by the way, why nearly all ransomware groups are still asking for ransom in Bitcoin instead of Monero. Does anybody know why? Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, if I don't know, the corporation needs to pay millions in like in a cryptocurrency, then on-ramping millions into Monero is kind of difficult for a business to do. So.
Yeah. So basically, you're saying the difficulty of the victim is a major role here, or plays a major role here. Anybody else? Liquidity, okay, yeah. Anybody else? Yep.
Does that imply that the victim is the customer and the customer is always right?
You're actually, yes, indeed. The victim is indeed the customer, and the customer is always right. So it is indeed also about liquidity. Absolutely, right? So it's not easy to acquire a couple of $100,000 in Monero all at once, and then you have the on-ramping and the off-ramping, definitely. But these people who are, these are mostly Russian organized crime groups, right? They're in this for money. This is their business. They actually run their ransomware operations as a business. And I think everybody who is an entrepreneur knows that the customer is always right. So if there are victims that you make or people that you infect with ransomware that have difficulties paying in Monero and therefore don't pay, that means you're losing value. You're losing future payments. You're losing future income. So that means that ransomware groups, till this day, are mainly opting to ask ransom demand or do ransom demands in Bitcoins instead of in Monero, because the customer is indeed always right. So that same thing holds for the dark markets, right? So these markets on the dark web, but there's another thing going on right now, and that is that there is competition for these marketplaces on the dark web. And that competition is Telegram. And as you know, there is a real big difference between dark markets and Telegram channels. Does anybody want to take a shot at what is different? Yeah?
Aren't most Telegram channels and group chats and most stuff on Telegram unencrypted by default?
If you have public channels on Telegram, indeed the communication is by default unencrypted because everyone is able to view these messages. You don't have to be a member of the channel to view the messages. Absolutely right.
And then also, I don't think they have an escrow system, do they? Or like an arbitration system?
No, exactly. So you're the best student in the class. Thank you very much. I am not doing anything no, I'm not making that a remark. But in any case, you're absolutely right. So the main difference between these dark markets and between Telegram channels is that there is no third party. Because a Telegram channel is basically a communication platform. It's not a marketplace. So what happens there, and this is the way, if you think in reverse, that means that there is no one, literally no one, who obliges you to follow certain marketplace rules. And what I mean to say by that is, if you look at Telegram channels and compare the advertisements on Telegram channels with darknet market advertisements, well, basically they are the same. And that means, and if you look at both groups, so if you look at both groups of advertisements, then the main difference is only one thing. Well, there's one important thing that is different. And that one important thing is that there is only a seller, so there's a vendor, and there is a potential buyer, but there's no marketplace, right? So there's no escrow system. There's no other trust-based system that helps you navigate scams. The only thing that there is are advertisements in a communication channel, on a communication platform. Then thereafter, you can DM the person who set that advertisement to settle on a payment method. However, these payment methods are already described in these advertisements. Yeah.
Is there some sort of, like, in terms of the ads, is there some sort of, like, for a group chat or a given group, do they perform any vetting to have some sort of, like, cobbled together reputation system?
No, that's a very good question. Is there any vetting going on in these channels? The answer is no. This is a purely communication channel where everyone can, because this is also spamming, right? Because this is not as structured as eBay. This is not as structured as a dark market. This is structured basically as your regular Telegram chat with a bunch of people, right? So if you want to have your advertisement there prominently in the picture for everyone who's viewing your channel or viewing that channel, you need to repost and repost and repost and repost. But these advertisements, ironically, look near identical. So there's one big difference. There's no marketplace. But there's another big difference, and that comes from the fact that there is no marketplace. Does anybody know what I'm referring to? If there is no marketplace, what does that mean? It's open, it's peer-to-peer, yeah? And how does it translate into what the advertisement actually can do, can refer to?
Anything.
Exactly, it can refer to anything. There is no one setting guidelines. And for our interest here, that also means the vendor itself can determine completely free, or in all freedom is what I'm trying to say, how she wants to get paid. So let's assume that it's not actually the vendors or the buyers who don't want to pay Monero, it's the marketplaces who don't allow you or force you to pay Monero, and that's why it's not happening on these marketplaces. So basically, the answer to the question, is the motivation, is the intrinsic motivation there among these people to buy and sell in Monero? The answer to that question you can find on a Telegram channel, because there you can observe the true payment preference of a vendor. Because there's no marketplace setting any guidelines. Well, okay, this is what we thought. And then comes the second part, easier said than done. How do you then analyze that? Because is then Monero everywhere? Right, that's the question. Is then Monero everywhere? Because vendors can choose themselves. They have the freedom to choose whichever payment method they want. And do they then indeed go for Monero over Bitcoin or something else? And again, to observe that, we need to invest into finding these channels, to finding these Telegram channels, and analyzing these on a large scale, because that's what we do. Well, that came with a lot of headaches. So basically what we did is, so this all comes from my research group. My research group is based in the Netherlands. So we looked at 4 million or more than 4 million Telegram messages in Telegram channels who focus on selling of illegal narcotics. And we parsed 4 million messages to figure out two things. One, what are people selling? And I have to admit, I don't know if that has actually been sold. Because on a marketplace, I know that people are advertising, and there are also feedback mechanisms that make sure that I can observe whether or not something has been sold. Because you can only leave a review on these marketplaces if you have actually bought the product. Which means that if a certain advertisement has 10 feedbacks, so 10 people have left a review, that means that the product has at least been sold 10 times. Here I don't know all of that. I only know what has been advertised. Yeah, so that's one thing to keep in mind. So we wanted to figure out two things. One is, what is been advertised, or what has been advertised? And two, we want to figure out how are people advertising, how they want to get paid. And then, the cherry on top, correlate these two. Yeah? So is there a correlation between what you sell and how you want to get paid? Okay, well, here comes not a meme, but a graph. So, or a question, basically. So the question is, on Telegram, can you then pay, in Deutsch or in Kanye or in BTC or in XMR? And now comes the graph. Okay, so what you're looking at here is a result of parsing 4 million messages, using machine learning to then deduce what type of advertisement we're looking at, and then using another type of machine learning to figure out what types of payment methods actually are used to or in these advertisements, and then making sure we can compare those across categories. Okay, on the x-axis, what you see is a percentage from 0 to 100, or in this case, from 0 to 1, from 0 to 100. Okay, that's on the x-axis. On the y-axis, you see different types of products. Yeah? So for instance, the first one is called cash out. That means people who are selling stolen credit cards or other means to facilitate money laundering. Oh, by the way, these groups that we investigated are all groups that we know are mainly focused around illegal goods and services. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. Okay, so let's say the first one on the left is cash out, and then you see different types of drugs. So in the Netherlands, there's a distinction between weed, which is what we call soft drugs, and let's say ecstasy, which is hard drugs. Not really important. And then we have pharmaceuticals, cybercrime items. Well, and you can read the rest: personal documents, fireworks, stolen goods, and others. Okay, and then each color represents a payment method. I think one of the first things that comes to your mind, because you're sitting here at MoneroTopia, no XMR. We did not find one single vendor who did advertise that he or she wanted to get paid in Monero. So why is that? Well, maybe before we do the why is that question, what you do see is correlations between the type of product that people sell and the choice of payment preference that they have. For instance, in the categories revolving around illegal narcotics, or the drugs categories, you see a significantly higher proportion of people who ask for bitcoins. Well, why is that? Well, we assume that is because people, since since all the dark markets exist, are used to paying drugs with cryptocurrencies. So that's why these sellers, these vendors, actually opt to say, I want to get paid in Bitcoin. Whereas because the drugs are delivered physically to someone, you can also say, I want to get paid in cash, which is also happening. But the one thing you can take away from this graph is that in all categories, there is no XMR. So why is that? Well, my assumption, and I would love to hear your thoughts. My assumption is that also here on these platforms, maybe even more so than on platforms like dark markets, the customer is still king. And if people who are seeking to buy, let's say, illegal narcotics, if they just want to pay in bitcoins and that's it, and all the other things are too complicated and people are not actually wanting to go through that hassle, that means that if you advertise that you only want to get paid in Monero, you don't sell anything. Whether it is on a dark market or whether it is on a Telegram channel. Although on a Telegram channel, you actually have a choice of your own. So basically what we did by doing this last piece of research is figuring out that this whole story, like how Doug introduced this session as well, there is Monero is like used as a synonym sometimes for an obscure payment method that's only used in criminal ecosystems. Well, the answer to that question is, based on this work, it does not equal nefarious use. What we see here actually is that people tend not to advertise illegal narcotics and all sorts of other illegal products to be paid in Monero. And of course, we can question about the reasoning behind that, and et cetera, and we had talked about these Russian ransomware groups. But I think the most important part for what I would like to talk to you about today is that it seems, at least, that the stories of Monero being king on these underground marketplaces is based on anecdotal and not empirical evidence. Because if you look at this, looking at dark markets, looking at Telegram channels, it is absolutely not the case that that is a front runner, and it's also absolutely not the case that people are forced not to use Monero. Also, if you leave them any payment option, what they would love to get, or how they would love to get paid, if you leave that option completely on the table for them to decide on, they are still not taking that. So I think, for the community that you are, I think that's good news, because that means that it is absolutely not the case that there's a synonym between Monero and crime. And I think that that is something that has been told a lot of times and is a little bit more nuanced than people actually are telling the story about. So that was the last thing that I wanted to add. Are there any questions? Yeah.
Is it also possible that
can you use the mic? So just to get here on the live.
yeah, is it also possible that I know Telegram in particular, like personally I don't use Telegram because I don't think its privacy is up to par. So is it possible that there's just kind of like a correlation between Telegram being a little bit more of like a casual privacy app versus like people that use Monero are generally pretty serious about privacy and take kind of those extra steps?
Yeah, that's, I don't know.
Now we just have my mic, not yours.
I guess so, yeah. But I don't know if people can hear me now, but at least people here can hear me. Yeah, so can you put my mic on? Thanks. Yeah, no, that's a great remark. I can see that logic, absolutely. And I believe that is a nuance you should also place with this work. However, what we do see is that even in the most, let's say, more professional ways of conducting these types of business, like ransomware operators, and I think we can definitely concur that these are experienced professionals. They also, and they value their privacy, is what I'm saying. They also are not opting to go to Monero. So I think there's a little bit more in, there's more at play here, but you're absolutely right. It could be that what you're observing at Telegram is a different subset of people. Yeah.
I have a question. What were the other payment methods, and what percentage of it was Bitcoin? And yeah, I'm curious about.
Let me jump back. Yeah, so what you see with illegal narcotics, it's up to 40% people are advertising to be paid in Bitcoin. What I didn't go over in this graph, because I wanted to focus this on crypto, is something called PaySafe. I don't know if you've heard of PaySafe. PaySafe is like not an instant, but like a prepaid debit credit card solution that is licensed by MasterCard, actually. So you can top up that credit card with Bitcoin and then pay using the PaySafe card. So you can basically, add value to that card with Bitcoin and then pay using the MasterCard system. That actually, that's the green bar in all the products. To my surprise, that was actually more prominent than Bitcoin in some forms of crime, and was actually very prominent throughout all the classes of products that we analyzed. So that's basically what I could add to that. Yeah.
Did you conduct a similar analysis on actual darknet markets and compare those to the data from Telegram?
Yeah, we did. That has been some time ago. And what we saw, if I do this by the top of my head, is that more than a quarter of vendors on a certain market indicated that they wanted to get paid in Monero, right? So they indicated that both Bitcoin and Monero would be acceptable to them as a form of payment. However, if you then look into the percentage of buyers who would actually pay in Monero, that was way lower. That was maybe 2-3%. So there's a real discrepancy there between what people indicate that they want to get paid in and what buyers actually want to get, how actually buyers want to pay. Is that an answer to your question? Yeah? Okay.
Is there any way to know, or any analysis on how much volume of, let's say, illegal trade happens in Telegram compared to dark markets?
Yeah, also that's a very good question. No, actually that's very hard to say. We know that, let's say, over 90% of all products that are sold on these dark markets are illegal products, right? Because, well, maybe people are selling ebooks, but maybe they're pirated ebooks, I don't know. But let's assume that might be a small proportion of legal products that has been sold on these marketplaces. So we know from that these marketplaces on the dark web are concerned with 90+% illegal. Oh, sorry, did you mean that?
No, my question is. Yeah, my question is like, which market is bigger, right? Is Telegram selling $1 billion a year and Darknet $2 billion? Like, do we have a sense of the size of these markets?
Yeah. So I have to add that this has a geographical focus, right? So the plot that's behind me is focused on a segment of Telegram channels in the Netherlands, right? But still, I would be comfortable saying that the dark market ecosystem is a factor 2 or 3 bigger than what is traded on Telegram. Yep. Okay.
I guess the obvious question: what is Monero actually being used for, if anything? It surprises me what you're saying.
Yeah. I don't have the answer to that question. The answer to the question that I do have is it used on these platforms? And the answer is to a very limited amount. Yeah.
Do you have any idea on the geographic location of the vendors? Like, are we talking what part of the world they're in and how that relates to these results?
Yeah. So for this analysis, we know that these are people who are operating from Western Europe, so the Netherlands, basically. Of course, we know that dark markets are a global platform. But I do not have any insights into the geographical distribution of people who are advertising or buying products on dark markets, because I think you're asking this in relationship to their payment preferences, right?
Correct. I mean, I'm also looking, for example, is there significant presence from Eastern Europe, from Confederation of the former Soviet Union, places like Russia, Ukraine. I'm also thinking of places outside of Europe at all.
Yeah.
So is this very much Western Europe, EU, EEA, that kind of thing?
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. which I'm unfortunately not able to answer. But and the reason why I am not able to answer that is because these dark markets make sure that people are trading on an anonymous basis, which means that the only indicator that you have about their geographical location is an indicator that they say, I am shipping this product from, and then they name a country. We don't know if that's an accurate indicator for where they're actually located. That's one complication. The second complication is that only is available for physical products, right? So if you're selling stolen credit card details, you're not saying I'm shipping this from the former Soviet Union, right? So these indicators are absent in the data. So that means that, yeah. So I think I understand, and I would love to speculate with you if that is the case, but I can't because I don't have the data. No.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know how we are with time. I'm looking at someone who feels responsible. No one? Okay.
I'm wondering just how does the Netherlands look in general with like general crypto adoption? Because like when looking at your data, I'm kind of thinking like, is it possible that many of them, like there just isn't that much crypto adoption?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say that for Western Europe, for Western Europe, I think we, as in the Netherlands, has a high cryptocurrency adoption compared to, let's say, other countries that are neighboring us or other countries in the same geographical region. So I think I know where you're going with this, which is, could it be an artifact of a low cryptocurrency adoption standard that we see this in the data? Could be, because I have no, evidence to the contrary. Yeah. But I feel that cryptocurrency adoption also, if I look at the amount of exchanges that are based in the Netherlands, how many people, I think last year, so we have 17 million inhabitants, and I think it was over 1 million people indicated in surveys that they had some form of cryptocurrency in their possession.
Oh, so that's actually pretty high.
Exactly, and I don't know, those are surveys, so you don't know, you could better ask the tax authority, of course, because they should have the most complete picture. I say should, I'm not saying have, but so that's a very good question. So we could speculate, but I don't think that's an artifact we see in the data. No. Thanks for the question.
Thanks.
I didn't hear your whole talk, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding everything. So I've done my own for research purposes only. I've checked things out. I've seen on basically the front page of the dark markets, Dread, right? Yep. The first thing you see a listing of marketplaces, and the top recommended ones are these Monero accepting marketplaces. Are you saying those aren't being used much? Have you done research in that regard?
Yeah, also, that's a very good question as well. There are indeed Monero-only marketplaces, but to my knowledge, they play a smaller role in the complete ecosystem of darknet markets, and the most prominent markets right now are still offering a choice between paying in Bitcoin or paying in Monero.
And the most prominent markets you're referring to, like basically Telegram, people using Telegram.
Well, I mean the darknet marketplaces, the prominent darknet marketplaces, they are accepting both. So Bitcoin alongside Monero. You have Monero-only marketplaces, but at least the picture that I have is that they don't play a prominent role in terms of the total share that they have in the ecosystem.
So why are they like the top listed suggested marketplaces on Dread?
Well, I mean, Dread has a reputation there could be two things at play here. One is Dread has wants to make sure that you go for the most anonymous solution. Mm-hmm. And the other is, before Dread, there were other referral marketplaces or referral sites. Yeah, so people or a site you can visit that refers you to dark markets. They worked on a similar way as that Google does. If you pay, you get top listed. So it could be that these marketplaces are paying to be top listed there because they want to increase their traction, therefore being at the top of the list, not because, I'm speculating now, right?
Okay.
But this was the case on earlier referral sites.
The top listed, have you done research on these marketplaces themselves, like the Monero-based ones, to see if they're actually, how much? Obviously, it's hard to gauge, right? But
this is precisely the point. Yeah. So you have to work with the data that's on the marketplace. You can't really see, of course, that's the whole purpose of a privacy-preserving blockchain. If there is actually transactions that are associated with the marketplace, whereas in the Bitcoin ecosystem, you do have that visibility.
Right.
Yeah. So that makes it
a big yeah. It's obviously difficult to gauge with Monero what it's being used for and how much it's being used.
Exactly. And maybe to make this full circle, that means that a lot of people, because they don't know, make the assumption that it has to be criminal use. And what I tried to do in this talk is nuance that perspective a little bit, that at least for the observations that we have been doing, that doesn't appear to be a logical conclusion to draw. And the conclusion that you have to draw is actually way more nuanced.
Right. Right. Obviously, U.S. dollars is used in dark markets more than anything else.
Well, I mean...
black markets.
Yeah, I mean, indeed. If you're looking at... if you go back to this plot... Oh, wait, I have to go the other way around. I think in... what's that? It's the bar at the top, which is like some form or shape of red. That's cash, right?
Yep.
Which means in this case that's euros. So then the most used, if you add that all up, then the most used thing is euro. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much,
You're
Matt.
welcome.
Greatly appreciate it. Oh, wait. We got one more.
Yeah. Oh.
So are these numbers in the parentheses the total number of listings that you see?
Yeah.
Okay.
The total number of listings where people have advertised their payment preference.
Okay, so over 4 million Telegram messages, you have, like 750 listings for hard drugs?
You have 750 listings for hard drugs that mention how they want to get paid.
I would imagine that almost any listing would include a payment preference.
Yeah, but it doesn't.
They don't?
No.
Okay, well, because the number seems low, to be honest. If we're talking about a dark market of some significance, I would imagine that, the top dark market would have many more than 750
Yeah, no,
listings,
absolutely. So that's a great observation.
Yeah, just seems like an incomplete data set, to be honest. I would maybe be interested if there's a correlation between the disappearance of Hydra market, if you remember that.
Yep.
That was a Russian-based sort of, Bitcoin only, maybe, or
that was a Bitcoin only market.
Yeah, Bitcoin only. Sort of, they had different tactics. They were dropping drugs in certain places and doing physical pickups, and it seems like this is taking the place of that, especially considering that Telegram is so geographically centered on
absolutely,
Russia and that whole region.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's also why you see these numbers, basically because you have a small geographical focus.
Yeah.
That means that the number I had to add though is that the 4 million is all messages. If you then deduplicate all these messages, right? Because people are spamming the same advertisement over and over and over and over and over again. These are unique advertisements that actually indicate how they want to get paid.
Okay.
If you understand, so there's a big filtering going on before you actually get to the numbers that you see in parentheses.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I understand is that there's maybe about 750 different merchants that you were able to identify.
Yes, exactly. And these 750, basically there are more than 750 merchants, but there are 750 merchants who have an advertisement let's say selling ecstasy, and they actually list the way they want to get paid.
Got it.
Yeah, because normally the payment, of course, is not handled through Telegram, because Telegram is not a market. So in these channels, you find someone, then you DM that individual, and it also makes sense that that individual only says how she wants to get paid when you DM that individual. So that's why these numbers look like these numbers look like.
I understand. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
very much.
I just want to, if you don't mind, because we haven't been taking a lot of the questions from people watching at home. Let me see, I think we have one here. If vendors prefer Monero and sellers prefer Monero, then why is Monero? Okay.
Yeah, maybe to nuance that. So buyers. So the problem is actually the buyer, or the problem. I don't know if that's a problem, but vendors are liking Monero more than buyers are. That's basically my.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vendors are preferring Monero, not buyers.
Yes.
Yes. Did somebody saying, did Pavel Durov's arrest shift payment preferences on Telegram? I mean,
yeah, that would be a lovely follow-up study to this. Absolutely. You guys know Pavel Durov, right? That's the CEO of Telegram. Telegram did shift some of its procedures after he was arrested. Before, they weren't sharing any identifiable information of users, and now they are. So that's, I think, a major shift in how Telegram operates. So how that looks like in years to come in this picture, we don't know. But I think we were rounding up, at least Doug was trying to. So thank you so much. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you for all the interaction. And see you around.